Hello everyone, and welcome back to Shadow Man Stories. I know many of you use these videos to fall asleep, so before you drift off, I'd love it if you could leave a comment letting me know where you're listening from around the world. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe if you're enjoying the stories. My name is Catherine Rodriguez. Everyone calls me Cat. I'm 28 years old, and I killed my best friend. Not on purpose. Never on purpose. But she's still dead because of me. It happened last summer in the Bridger Teton Mountains. Sarah and I had been climbing partners for 5 years. We knew each other's moves like our own, or at least we were supposed to. That morning, I was distracted. My boyfriend Matt and I had a huge fight the night before. He wanted me to stop climbing, said it was too dangerous. I kept checking my phone for his messages instead of checking our gear. "Earth to Cat," Sarah laughed, her dark ponytail swinging as she tilted her head. "You with me today or what?" "Sorry," I mumbled, shoving my phone in my pocket. "Let's do this." The climb started like any other. Blue sky overhead, the smell of pine in the air, the familiar weight of the rock beneath my fingers. For a little, while I forgot about Matt and lost myself in the rhythm of the climb, we were 500 feet up when it happened. Sarah had just climbed past me and anchored herself to set up our next route. I was preparing to follow when my phone buzzed. Matt had texted, "We need to talk." Just 5 seconds. That's all it took. 5 seconds when I should have been double-checking. The carabiner that connected Sarah's rope to the anchor point. 5 seconds when I was thinking about stupid relationship drama instead of making sure my best friend wouldn't fall to her death. I heard it before I saw it. A metallic ping. The sound of metal giving way. Then Sarah's voice, confused at first, then terrified. "Cat, something's wrong with the... Cat, help me!" I looked up just in time to see her falling away from me. Her eyes locked with mine, her mouth open in a scream that seemed to echo forever off the canyon walls. 500 feet is a long way to fall. Long enough to watch your best friends body bounce off the rock face twice before hitting the ground. Long enough to hear her screams fade into nothing. I rappelled down as fast as I could. My hands were bleeding by the time I reached her, but I didn't feel it. I kept thinking maybe, somehow she was okay. People survive falls sometimes, right? Sarah was still alive when I got to her. That was the worst part. "Cold," she whispered when I reached her. Blood bubbled at the corner of her mouth. Her legs were bent at angles legs should never bend. "I'm so cold, Cat." I took off my jacket and laid it over her. I held her hand and told her help was coming, even though I knew there was no way a rescue team could reach us in time. The nearest ranger station was hours away. "Not your fault," she said, her voice barely audible. "Tell my dad." But she never finished telling me what to tell her dad. She just squeezed my hand once, very hard, then her grip went slack. I sat there holding Sarah's hand for 20 minutes after she died. I couldn't let go. Somewhere overhead, a bird called. The sun kept shining. The world kept going even though Sarah was gone, and all because I didn't check a stupid carabiner. That was 3 years ago. I haven't climbed since. After Sarah died, I moved to a small apartment in Denver. I got a job at an outdoor gear shop, but I stayed in the back room doing inventory. I couldn't face customers who might ask about climbing. I still wake up some nights hearing Sarah's scream. The doctors call it PTSD. I call it what I deserve. Matt and I broke up a week after the funeral. He didn't say, "I told you so," but I could see it in his eyes. The phone call came on a Tuesday morning in April. "Is this Catherine Rodriguez?" a man's voice asked. "Yes," I said, balancing the phone between my ear and shoulder as I sorted climbing ropes I would never use again. "My name is Dr. Harold Nichols. I'm a geologist with the University of Wyoming. I'm putting together a research team to study unusual rock formations in the Bridger Teton Range. Your name came up as someone with extensive experience in those mountains." My stomach tightened. "I don't climb anymore." There was a pause. I understand, but this wouldn't require technical climbing, just hiking to some remote locations. Your knowledge of the terrain would be invaluable. Why me? I asked. There are plenty of climbers in Wyoming. Another pause. Your particular experience in the Eastern Canyons is what we need. The Eastern Canyons, where Sarah died. I should have said no, but something in his voice made me curious. He sounded older, maybe in his 50s. There was a gentleness there, but also something else I couldn't place. When would this be? I asked. 2 weeks from now? A 10-day expedition. I looked around my small apartment, the walls that seemed to close in a little more each day. The climbing gear I kept in boxes, but couldn't bring myself to throw away. I'll think about it, I said. Dr. Nichols sent me the details by email that afternoon. The pay was good, really good. And he was right, it didn't involve technical climbing, just guiding the research team to specific locations. Maybe this was what I needed. A way to face those mountains again. A way to stop running. I called him back the next day and said yes. We met at a small motel in Jackson 2 weeks later. Dr. Nichols was tall and thin with gray hair and glasses. Deep lines around his eyes made him look tired. His handshake was firm but quick, like he didn't want to touch me for too long. The rest of the team couldn't make it, he said as we loaded gear into his Jeep. Budget cuts. It'll just be the two of us. I should have found that strange. I should have asked more questions, but I was too busy fighting the knot in my stomach as we drove toward the mountains. The same road Sarah and I had taken 3 years ago. As we got closer, I noticed how Dr. Nichols kept glancing at me, then quickly looking away when I caught him. He gripped the steering wheel so tight his knuckles turned white. Have you worked in these mountains before? I asked. Yes, he said, a long time ago. We made camp at the base of the mountain, the same one where Sarah fell. I thought I'd feel worse being back, but it was almost a relief, like visiting a grave. That night, I woke to the sound of Dr. Nichols talking in his sleep in the tent next to mine. Sarah, he mumbled. Sarah, don't go. A cold feeling spread through my body. Sarah isn't such an unusual name, I told myself. But something felt wrong. Very wrong. The next morning we started our hike up the mountain. Every step took me closer to the spot where I'd lost Sarah. Every step made me more certain that Dr. Nichols wasn't telling me everything. And I was right. The mountain had secrets. Dr. Nichols had secrets. And soon I would wish I had never come back to this place. We started climbing at dawn. Not technical climbing, just hiking up steep trails with our heavy packs. Dr. Nichols moved like a man who knew exactly where he was going. He barely checked the map. So what kind of rocks are we looking for? I asked, trying to sound normal, even though my heart was pounding. We were getting closer to the spot. Anomalies, he said without looking back. Formations that shouldn't be there. By noon, we reached the ridge that overlooked the canyon where Sarah fell. I stopped walking. My legs wouldn't move anymore. Something wrong? Dr. Nichols asked, turning to face me. I pointed to the cliff face about 100 yards away. That's where it happened. He stared at the spot for a long time. His face went hard, like stone. Yes, he said quietly. I know. A chill ran down my spine. How did he know? I hadn't told him the exact location. We need to go down there, he said, pointing to the base of the cliff where Sarah had landed. My mouth went dry. Why? The rock formations I'm studying are there. He started walking again, not waiting to see if I followed. I wanted to turn around, to run back down the mountain and never return. But something kept me moving forward. Maybe I needed to face this place one last time. The descent into the canyon was steep. We had to use ropes for some sections, and my hands shook as I handled the equipment. Every knot I tied, every carabiner. I clipped, I checked 3 times. Never again would someone die because I was careless. As we got closer to the bottom, strange things started happening. First, it was just little stuff. My water bottle, which I'd placed on a rock, wasn't where I left it. It had somehow moved uphill about 10 feet. "Did you move my water?" I asked Dr. Nichols. He shook his head, not even looking at me. Then I noticed the stones, small pebbles that seemed to roll uphill instead of down. I watched one for nearly a minute, sure my eyes were playing tricks on me. But no, it was definitely moving against gravity, sliding up the rocky slope like it was being pulled by an invisible string. "Dr. Nichols," I said, my voice shaking, "the rocks are moving the wrong way." He nodded like this was exactly what he expected. "That's what I'm here to study." We reached the bottom of the canyon by late afternoon. The air felt different here, heavier like before a storm, but the sky was clear blue. And then I saw it, a dark stain on the rocks, faded, but still visible after 3 years. Sarah's blood. I froze, staring at the spot. Memories flooded back, her broken body, her hand going limp in mine. "This is where she landed," I whispered. Dr. Nichols knelt by the stain, touching it gently. "Yes," he said. His voice sounded strange, choked. I was about to ask him how. He knew so much about Sarah's accident when I heard it. A voice, Sarah's voice. "Kat, can you hear me?" It came from everywhere and nowhere at once, an echo without a source. "Did you hear that?" I gasped, spinning around. Dr. Nichols stood very still. "What did it say?" It sounded like Sarah. I couldn't believe I was saying it out loud. "But that's impossible." "Nothing is impossible here," he said. He pulled out a small device from his pocket, some kind of scientific instrument with a needle that swung wildly back and forth. "The magnetic readings are off the charts." I backed away from the bloodstain. "What's happening?" "The mountain remembers," Dr. Nichols said. His eyes were fierce behind his glasses, "and it's trying to give her back." A gust of wind swept through the canyon, but it moved in the wrong direction, sucking inward instead of blowing past us. Small stones began to roll toward the bloodstain from all directions. "We need to set up camp here," Dr. Nichols said, dropping his pack. "Here, right where she died?" I couldn't imagine sleeping in this spot. "Yes." He started unpacking his tent. "This is where it will happen." "Where what will happen?" I demanded. Before he could answer, we heard something else, a howl that echoed through the canyon. Not a wolf, not a coyote, something else, something wrong. "What was that?" I whispered. Dr. Nichols looked up at the ridgeline, his face pale. "Something that shouldn't be here." The sun was setting now, casting long shadows across the canyon floor, shadows that seemed to move even when nothing was moving. "Dr. Nichols," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, "I think you need to tell me what's really going on." He looked at me for a long moment. The wind picked up again, still moving the wrong way, pulling at our clothes like hands, trying to drag us toward the bloodstain. "You're right," he finally said. "It's time you knew the truth." Dr. Nichols and I sat on opposite sides of our small campfire. The flames cast strange shadows on his face, making him look older, sadder. "I'm not really here to study rock formations," he said quietly. "Or at least, not only that." I waited, my hands wrapped tight around my coffee mug for warmth. The canyon had grown cold after sunset. "I'm here because of Sarah," he said. "Sarah Martinez." My stomach dropped. "You knew Sarah?" He nodded slowly. "She was my daughter." The mug slipped from my hands, spilling hot coffee across my legs. I barely felt it. "Your daughter, but your last name?" "She took her mother's name after the divorce," he explained. His eyes never left mine. "I'm Sarah's father." I couldn't breathe. Sarah had mentioned her dad was a scientist, but we never talked much about our families. We talked about climbing, about the next mountain, the next challenge. "You knew," I whispered. "You knew who I was all along." "Yes," Why bring me here? Why not just tell me? His eyes grew hard. Because I wanted you to see, to feel what she felt. I wanted you to face what happened. The accusation hung in the air between us. He blamed me. Of course he did. I blamed myself too. I'm sorry, I said, my voice breaking. I should have checked the equipment better. It was my fault. Something howled in the distance again. That same unnatural sound we'd heard earlier. Closer now. Dr. Nichols looked up sharply. It's coming. What's coming? I asked, fear creeping into my voice. The locals call it Shunka Warakin, carries off dogs in the Sioux language. A creature that's not quite wolf, not quite mountain. Lion! Most think it's just a legend. He pulled his jacket tighter around himself. But it's real, and it's hunting us. I wanted to laugh to tell him he was crazy, but after what I'd seen today, rocks moving uphill, Sarah's voice in the wind, I wasn't sure what was crazy anymore. Why would it hunt us? Because we're here. Because of what happened to Sarah. His voice dropped to almost a whisper. The mountain remembers Catherine, and it wants balance. Another howl echoed through the canyon, bouncing off the walls until it seemed to come from everywhere. At once, I jumped to my feet. We should leave, I said, right now. Dr. Nichols shook his head. It's too dark to climb out safely. We're stuck here until morning. I grabbed my flashlight from my pack. Then we need to be ready. What does this thing look like? I don't know, he admitted. I've only heard it. But the legends say it's dark, with a ridge of hair down its back that stands up like spikes. We fell silent, listening to the night. For a while there was nothing, just the crackle of our fire and the soft whisper of the wind. Then I saw it, just at the edge of our campfire light, two eyes reflecting the flames. Not green or yellow like an animal's eyes should be. These were dark, almost black, with just a hint of red. Dr. Nichols, I whispered, not moving. Don't turn around too fast, but there's something watching us. He stiffened. Where? By the large boulder to your right. He turned slowly, then froze. I see it. The creature moved closer, just enough for us to make out its shape. It was wolf-like, but wrong somehow. Too big. Its shoulders hunched high, and a ridge of dark fur ran along its spine, standing up like a mohawk. But what made my blood run cold was the way it moved, carefully placing each paw like it was, thinking about every step. This wasn't an animal acting on instinct. This thing was hunting with purpose. And then it did something no animal should do. It walked to the exact spot where Sarah had died, the bloodstain on the rocks, and sat down. It stared directly at me, its head tilting to one side. It knows, I whispered. It knows what happened here. The creature opened its mouth, and what came out wasn't a growl or a bark. It was a sound that made my knees go weak. Cat, help me, Sarah's voice. The exact words she'd screamed as she fell. Dr. Nichols gasped. That's not possible. The creature stood and took a step toward us. I grabbed a burning branch from the fire and held it out like a weapon. Stay back, I shouted, my voice shaking. The creature stopped. It made that terrible sound again, Sarah's voice calling my name, then turned and melted into the darkness. My legs gave out, and I collapsed next to the fire. Dr. Nichols was pale, his hands trembling. What is that thing? I asked. I don't know, he said, but I think it's connected to Sarah somehow, to what happened to her guilt. Her guilt. I stared at him. Sarah didn't do anything wrong. I was the one who... Not her guilt, Dr. Nichols interrupted. Yours. The night suddenly felt much colder, because I knew he was right. That thing, whatever it was, had looked at me with knowing eyes. It had spoken with Sarah's voice, and somehow I knew it would be back. We need to take turns keeping watch, I said, trying to sound braver than I felt. I'll go first. Dr. Nichols nodded and crawled into his tent, but I knew neither of us would sleep much tonight. I sat by the fire, listening to every sound in the darkness, jumping at every shadow. And somewhere out in the night, I could feel it watching me, waiting. The creature that spoke with Sarah's voice. Morning came after what felt like the longest night of my life. I'd kept watch for 3 hours before waking Dr. Nichols to take his turn. I didn't sleep much even in my tent, just dozed and jerked awake at every sound. The creature, the Shunka Warakin, didn't come back, at least not where we could see it. Dr. Nichols looked as tired as I felt. We ate a cold breakfast, neither of us wanting to wait for water to boil. We needed to get moving. We should head back down, I said, stuffing my sleeping bag into my pack. Dr. Nichols shook his head. Not yet. We need to go up there. He pointed to the cliff face where Sarah had fallen. Why? I asked, my voice rising. We've seen enough. That thing is out there, and it's using Sarah's voice, and I don't want to be here anymore. That's exactly why we need to go up, he said firmly, to understand what's happening, to face it. I wanted to argue more, but the determination in his eyes stopped me. This was Sarah's father. He had more right to be here than I did. We packed up, camp, and started climbing toward the cliff face. Every step felt wrong, like walking back into a nightmare. My hands shook as I gripped the rocks. We were about halfway up when I noticed something strange about the route I was taking. It was familiar, too familiar. This is the same path Sarah and I took that day, I said, stopping suddenly. How did you know to come this way? Dr. Nichols was a few feet ahead of me. He didn't turn around. I studied the accident report, every detail. That made sense, I supposed. Of course, he would want to know exactly how his daughter died, but something still felt off about this whole situation. We reached a narrow ledge, the same one where Sarah and I had stopped to rest that day. The same one where I'd checked my phone instead of our gear. As I stepped onto the ledge, a wave of dizziness hit me. The air felt thick, hard to breathe, and there was a smell, copper and salt, the smell of blood. Do you smell that? I asked Dr. Nichols. He nodded, his face grim. It's stronger here. We continued along the ledge. I was sweating now, despite the cool mountain air. Every sound seemed amplified, the scrape of our boots on rock, our breathing, even my heartbeat pounding in my ears. And then I heard it. Again. Cat, something's wrong with the... Sarah's voice coming from right beside me. I spun around, but there was nothing there. Just empty air and the drop below. You heard it too, Dr. Nichols said. It wasn't a question. I nodded, my throat too tight to speak. We kept climbing. I was moving on autopilot now, my body remembering the route, even as my mind screamed at me to turn back. We reached the spot, the exact spot where it had happened, where the carabiner had failed, where Sarah had fallen. The ledge was wider, here, enough for both of us to stand comfortably. Dr. Nichols knelt down, examining the rock face. There's still a mark, he said, pointing to a small, dark stain on the stone. From when the rope scraped against it as she fell. I couldn't
Look.
At it. I turned away, facing the vast open air in front of the cliff, the same view Sarah had in her last moments. That's when I felt it, fingers gripping my arm, hard, desperate, digging in. I screamed and pulled away, spinning around. But it was only Dr. Nichols standing several feet away, looking confused. What's wrong? He asked. Something grabbed me, I gasped, rubbing my arm. There were marks there, 4 small bruises forming like fingerprints. I felt someone grab my arm. Dr. Nichols moved closer, examining the marks. Like someone trying to hold on, he said quietly. Just like Sarah had grabbed me as I tried to reach her after the fall. A low growl came from somewhere behind us. We both turned. The creature was there, watching us from higher up the cliff face. In the daylight, it looked even more wrong. Its fur was dark, almost black, but with streaks of reddish-brown that looked sickeningly like dried blood. Its body seemed to shift and change shape as it moved, never quite settling into one form. "Don't move," Dr. Nichols whispered. The creature took a step closer, then another. It was moving differently now, not like an animal on four legs, but awkwardly, like it was trying to walk upright. My mouth went dry as I realized what it was doing. It was mimicking the way Sarah had moved right before she fell, the little shuffle step she always did when setting up a new anchor point. "It's her," I whispered. "It's showing us Sarah." As if responding to its name, the creature let out a sound, not quite a howl, not quite a scream. The sound hit me like a physical blow. I tasted copper in my mouth, the same taste of fear I'd had the day Sarah died. The creature crouched low, then sprang toward us. Dr. Nichols shoved me aside, putting himself between me and the beast. It hit him hard, sending them both tumbling across the ledge. "No!" I screamed, scrambling to help. I grabbed a rock, the biggest one I could lift, and slammed it down on the creature's back. It made a sound like breaking bones and rolled. Away from Dr. Nichols, he was bleeding from claw marks across his chest, but he was alive. I helped him to his feet, both of us backing away from the creature. It got up slowly, shaking itself. Then it looked directly at me with those dark, knowing eyes. And it spoke again with Sarah's voice. "Not your fault." The same words she'd said to me as she was dying. The creature turned and leapt away, vanishing around a corner of the cliff face. Dr. Nichols was leaning heavily against me, his breath coming in pained gasps. "We need to get you down from here," I said. "You need a doctor." He shook his head. "No time, it will come back. And next time it won't just attack. It's building up to something." "To what?" I asked, helping him sit down on the ledge. Dr. Nichols looked up at me, his eyes filled with a terrible knowledge. "A choice," he said. "The same choice you faced with Sarah, but this time with different players." I stared at him, finally understanding what he meant. The creature wasn't just haunting us, it was recreating the accident, and this time I might be the one to fall. I ripped strips from my shirt to bandage Dr. Nichols's chest. The cuts weren't too deep, but in the wilderness any wound can be dangerous. "We need to get down from here," I said. "Now." He nodded weakly. The attack had taken a lot out of him. I helped him to his feet, letting him lean on me as we started the careful climb. Down. The sun was high overhead now. We had maybe 6 hours of daylight left. 6 hours to get off this mountain before that thing came back. "Why did you really bring me here?" I asked as we made our way down. The truth this time. Dr. Nichols was quiet for so long I thought he might not answer. "At first it was for revenge," he finally said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I wanted you to suffer like Sarah had suffered, like I had suffered." The honesty hurt, but I understood. "And now?" He shook his head. "Now I don't know. Something's happening here that's bigger than my anger, bigger than both of us." We reached a small clearing about halfway down the cliff. Dr. Nichols needed to rest, so we stopped. I gave him water and checked his bandages. The bleeding had slowed, but he was pale. "I started having dreams about Sarah a year ago," he said, staring off at the horizon. "Not normal dreams. She would tell me to come back to these mountains, that something was waiting." "The creature," I said. "Maybe, or maybe something else." He took a shaky breath. "Then I found out about the legends. The Shunkawarakin, a spirit that takes the form of what you fear most." "I don't fear wolves," I said. "No, but you fear guilt. You fear responsibility for Sarah's death." His eyes met mine. "That's what it's showing you." We sat in silence for a moment. A cold wind blew across the clearing, making me shiver. "There's something I need to tell you," Dr. Nichols said finally. "Something I've never told anyone." I waited, watching his face. "I was the one who taught Sarah to climb," he said, "when she was just a little girl. Her mother hated it, said it was too dangerous. We fought about it all the time. It's why we got divorced." He looked down at his hands. Sarah loved climbing. More than anything. She got that from me. I pushed her to try harder routes, bigger mountains. I was so proud of how fearless she was. His voice broke. "I'm the reason she was on this mountain that day. I'm the one who put her in danger her whole life." I stared at him, finally understanding. "You don't just blame me for her death. You blame yourself too." A tear slid down his weathered face. Every day, suddenly the pieces clicked together in my mind. That's why the creature attacked you, not me. It's feeding on both our guilt. Dr. Nichols nodded slowly. "I think it wants us both to face what happened, what we did. But I don't understand why I was cut off by a howl. That same unnatural sound, closer now, much closer." We both jumped to our feet. Dr. Nichols winced in pain. "It's coming," he said. "We need to move." We hurried down the trail as fast as we could with his injury. The howls continued, sometimes from in front of us, sometimes from behind. It was like the creature was everywhere at once. The path narrowed. Ahead, running along the edge of a steep drop, the same drop Sarah had fallen down. We would have to go single file. "You go first," I told Dr. Nichols. "I'll be right behind you." He started along the narrow path. I followed a few steps behind, constantly looking over my shoulder for the creature. We were halfway across when I heard it, a low growl right in front of us. The creature stepped out onto the path ahead of Dr. Nichols, blocking our way. "Back up," I called to him. "We'll go another way." But as we turned, there it was again. The same creature, somehow now behind us too. Impossible. But there it was. We were trapped. "How can it be in two places?" I whispered. "It's not real," Dr. Nichols said. "Not in the way we are. It's something else." The creature in front of us took a step closer to Dr. Nichols. He backed up as far as he could, but there was nowhere to go except the long drop to the rocks below, the exact spot where Sarah had died. "Catherine," Dr. Nichols said, his voice suddenly calm, "I need to tell you something important." "Tell me after we get out of this," I said, frantically looking for a way out. "There won't be an after." His eyes were clear now, determined. "I knew about the broken carabiner." I froze. "What?" "When I read the accident report, something didn't add up. The type of carabiner Sarah was using doesn't fail that way, not unless it was already damaged." My heart pounded in my chest. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying Sarah knew her equipment was faulty. She told her climbing partner the week before, not you, someone else, that she needed to replace it, but she didn't." I couldn't breathe. "No, that's not possible. Sarah was always careful." "Sarah was reckless," he said. "Like me. She took chances. She knew that carabiner might fail, but she used it anyway." The creature growled, moving closer. To Dr. Nichols. "She didn't die because you were distracted," he continued. "She died because she made a choice to climb with bad gear. You couldn't have saved her even if you'd checked it. The damage was inside, where you couldn't see." I felt like the ground was tilting under me. Everything I'd believed for 3 years, that I had killed my best friend through carelessness, was being turned upside down. "Why are you telling me this now?" I asked, my voice breaking. Dr. Nichols looked at the creature, then back at me. His face was sad but peaceful. "Because I wanted you to hate yourself the way I hated myself," he said. "I wanted someone else to blame. But now I see that the only way to end this is to face the truth." The creature lunged forward, slamming into Dr. Nichols. He stumbled back, right to the edge of the cliff. "No!" I screamed, rushing forward, but I was too late. Dr. Nichols looked at me one last time. "Tell Sarah I'm sorry," he said. And then he fell, just like his daughter had 3 years before. "No!" I screamed, watching Dr. Nichols disappear over the edge. Without thinking, I dropped to my stomach and crawled to the cliff edge. Maybe he had caught himself on something. Maybe he wasn't gone. I peered over the edge and saw him about 20 feet down, his body sprawled across a small ledge. He wasn't moving, but he hadn't fallen all the way to the bottom. "Dr. Nichols!" I called. "Can you hear me?" No response. I looked around for the creature, but it was gone, vanished as suddenly as it had appeared. I didn't have time to wonder. Why? Dr. Nichols needed help. I quickly pulled the climbing rope from my pack and secured it to a sturdy rock. My hands were shaking, but I forced myself to check and double-check every knot. No mistakes. Not again. I rappelled down to the small ledge where Dr. Nichols lay. His eyes were closed and blood trickled from a cut on his forehead, but he was breathing. "Dr. Nichols," I said, gently tapping his cheek. "Wake up. Please wake up." His eyes fluttered open. "Catherine," he mumbled, "what happened?" "You fell," I said, "but not all the way. We're on a ledge." He tried to move, then gasped in pain. "My leg. I think it's broken." I carefully checked his leg. It was definitely broken. I could see the unnatural angle. He wouldn't be climbing out of here. "I'm going to get you down," I said. "Then I'll go for help." He shook his head weakly. "No time. It'll be dark in a few hours." He was right. By the time I got him down and hiked out to find help, it would be night. And I didn't want to be on this mountain after dark. Not with that thing out there. "I'm not leaving you," I said firmly. A low growl came from above us. I looked up to see the creature staring down from the path where we'd been. "It's still here," I whispered. Dr. Nichols gripped my hand. "Listen carefully, Catherine. There's only one way to end this." "How?" "The creature wants balance. It wants the past to be made right." His eyes were intense despite his pain. "I think it's giving you a choice." "What choice?" "The same one you had with Sarah. Save someone or save yourself." The creature growled again, louder this time. I could see it pacing back and forth at the edge of the cliff above us. "But I tried to save Sarah," I said. "I just failed." Dr. Nichols shook his head. "Did you, or did you hesitate, even for a second?" I wanted to deny it, but the memory was suddenly crystal clear. That moment when Sarah started to fall. There had been a split second, just the blink of an eye, when I could have lunged for her, when I might have caught her. But I had frozen, thinking of my own safety first. "I hesitated," I whispered. "We all would," Dr. Nichols said gently. "It's human nature to protect yourself." The creature let out a sound. Not quite a howl, not quite a scream. It echoed off the canyon walls, making my skin crawl. "It's getting impatient," Dr. Nichols said. "You need to choose." "Choose what? Whether to save me or yourself?" I stared at him. "That's not a choice. I'm not leaving you here." "You might have to," he said. His eyes drifted to something behind me. "Look." I turned to see the rope I had used to rappel down was fraying where it rubbed against a sharp rock edge. As I watched, more strands snapped. "It won't hold both of us," Dr. Nichols said, "and I can't climb with this leg." My mind raced, trying to find a solution. "I can fix it, I can—" Another strand of the rope snapped. "There's no time," he said. "The rope is going to break soon. If you're still here when it does, we'll both fall." "Then we both fall," I said stubbornly. Dr. Nichols smiled sadly. "Sarah wouldn't want that. She'd want you to live." The creature howled again. This time, the sound was followed by Sarah's voice. "Not your fault, Cat." Tears filled my eyes. I looked at the fraying rope, then at Dr. Nichols, then up at the creature watching us. This was the test, the choice. Save myself or risk everything to save Sarah's father. The rope snapped another strand. "Go, Catherine," Dr. Nichols urged, "while you still can." I made my decision. I pulled off my belt and quickly wrapped it around the damaged section of rope, creating a buffer between the rope and the sharp rock. It wouldn't hold for long, but maybe long enough. "I'm getting us both out of here," I said. I helped Dr. Nichols to his feet, well, his good foot, and wrapped the rope around both of us, tying us together. "This is crazy," he said. "The rope won't hold." "Then we'd better climb fast," I replied. Using every bit of strength I had, I started to pull us up the rope. Dr. Nichols couldn't help much, but he did his best, using his arms to take some of the weight off me. The belt was already starting to slip on the damaged section of rope. We were only halfway up when another strand snapped. "We're not going to make it," Dr. Nichols gasped. "Yes, we are," I grunted, pulling harder. Just as we reached the top, the rope gave way completely. For one terrible moment, I felt us starting to fall. Then something impossible happened. The creature was there, its teeth sinking into the back of my jacket, pulling us the last few feet onto solid ground. We collapsed on the path, both of us breathing hard. I turned to look at the creature, but it was backing away, its form seeming to shimmer and change in the late afternoon light. "Thank you," I whispered to it. The creature made a soft sound, not Sarah's voice this time, but something gentle, almost like a sigh. Then it turned and bounded away, disappearing among the rocks. Dr. Nichols stared after it in disbelief. "It saved us." "No," I said. "It let me save us." That was the test. Using branches from nearby trees, I made a splint for Dr. Nichols' leg and a crude stretcher to pull him down the mountain. It was slow, exhausting work, but we made it to the base camp just as the sun was setting. I got him into the Jeep and drove straight to the hospital in Jackson. The doctors said he would recover, but he'd need surgery on his leg and time to heal. As I sat in the waiting room while they operated on him, I thought about what had happened on the mountain, about Sarah, about guilt, about choices. I realized something important. The weight I'd been carrying wasn't just guilt over Sarah's death. It was the fear that when it really mattered, I would always choose myself first. That I was, at my core, selfish. But I hadn't been. When it mattered most, I had risked everything to save someone else. Dr. Nichols recovered enough to travel home to Wyoming a week later. Before he left, he gave me Sarah's old climbing journal. "She would want you to have this," he said. "And, Catherine, she would want you to climb again." I didn't answer. I wasn't sure if I could ever go back to the mountains after what had happened. But 6 months later, I found myself standing at the base of an indoor climbing wall. My hands were sweating as I checked my harness, then checked it again, then a third time. "You're good to go," said my new climbing partner, a young woman named Maya who taught kids at the climbing gym. "That harness is perfect." I took a deep breath and placed my hand on the first hold. I still dream about the mountain sometimes. About Sarah falling, about Dr. Nichols on that ledge, about the creature with its knowing eyes. But I also dream about climbing higher, about the view from the top, about the feeling of overcoming fear. And sometimes when I'm on a difficult route and I start to doubt myself, I swear I can hear Sarah's voice, not screaming for help, but cheering me on. "You got this, Cat," the wind seems to whisper. "Not your fault. Never was." And I keep climbing, one careful hold at a time. My name is Michael O'Brien. I'm 35 years old, and I've been a cop for 12 years now, but none of that matters anymore. Nothing has mattered since that night 6 months ago in that Detroit alley. I can still feel Jake's hand in mine. Still feel how warm his blood was as it pooled beneath us on the cold concrete. Jake Washington was 29, my partner for 3 years, and the best man I've ever known. He had twin girls at home, Maya and Zoe, just 5 years old. Beautiful kids, with their daddy's smile. We were working a drug bust, simple operation. We'd done dozens just like it, but this one went wrong because of me. I hesitated. The shooter came around the corner, and I saw he was just a kid, maybe 15, 16 tops. I froze. For just 2 seconds, I froze. That's all it took. Jake didn't freeze, Jake moved to protect me, and the kid shot him 3 times in the chest. I remember Jake's eyes as I held him there in that alley, waiting for the ambulance that would arrive too late. He wasn't angry, he wasn't afraid. He just looked tired. "Tell my girls Daddy loved them," he whispered. Then he was gone. I got drunk that night, and every night since the funeral. 6 months of trying to drown Jake's face in whiskey. 6 months of failing. Yesterday they told me I'm being transferred to a small station near Wayne National Forest, in Ohio. A change of scenery, my captain called it. What he meant was, "You're a mess, O'Brien. Go someplace where you can't hurt anyone else." Maybe he's right. Maybe the quiet will help. But I doubt it. Because no matter where I go, that alley comes with me. The smell of gunpowder. The warmth of Jake's blood. The sound of my own voice. Not pulling the trigger. The drive to Ohio took all day. I kept the radio off and the windows down. Cold air helped keep me awake, since I hadn't slept more than 3 hours at a stretch since Jake died. Wade National Forest is pretty in a quiet way. Lots of trees, lots of silence. The kind of place where you can hear yourself think, which is exactly what I didn't want. The station was small, just a plain building with a tin roof at the edge of the forest. Inside, 5 desks were pushed together in the main room. A coffee pot that looked older than me sat in the corner. Sheriff Miller was a big man with a gray mustache and hands like baseball gloves. He didn't smile when we shook hands. "O'Brien," he said. "Heard you were coming. Detroit, right?" I nodded. "Well, this ain't Detroit. Most exciting thing that happens here is when tourists get lost in the woods, or teenagers sneak in to drink beer." "Sounds perfect," I lied. The sheriff studied me for a long moment. "You'll be partnered with Hammond. She's new too, transferred in about 2 months ago." A woman stood up from one of the desks. She was about my height, with short brown hair and eyes that had seen too much. Something about her seemed familiar, but I couldn't place it. "Lisa Hammond," she said, not smiling. Her handshake was firm, professional. "Michael O'Brien," I replied. For a second, I thought I saw something flicker across her face. Recognition, maybe, or dislike, but it was gone so fast I figured I'd imagined it. "Hammond will show you the ropes," Sheriff Miller said. "You two start patrol tomorrow morning, 6 a.m. sharp." I nodded, feeling Lisa's eyes on me. There was something in her gaze that made my skin crawl, like she was seeing right through me. "We've had reports of something strange in the southeast section," she said. Her voice was flat. "Campers saying they heard weird noises, saw something big moving through the trees." "Probably just a bear," I said. "We don't have bears here," she replied. "Not anymore." That night I stayed in a small motel at the edge of town. The bed was hard and the walls were thin. I could hear the person next door snoring. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, thinking about my new partner. Something about Lisa Hammond bothered me, something I couldn't put my finger on. I reached for the bottle of whiskey in my bag, but stopped myself. Tomorrow was my first day. I needed to be sharp. For the first time in 6 months, I fell asleep without drinking. I dreamed of Jake's blood on my hands and woke up screaming at 3 a.m. I met Lisa at the station at 5:45 a.m. She was already there, drinking coffee from a thermos. "You look like hell," she said. "Thanks." She tossed me the keys to the patrol truck. "You drive, I'll navigate." The forest was thick with morning fog as we drove down narrow dirt roads. Trees loomed on both sides like silent watchers. The sun was just starting to rise, turning the mist golden. "So what brought you to Ohio?" I asked, trying to make small talk. Lisa stared out the window for a long time before answering. "Needed a change. Detroit wasn't working for me anymore." My hands tightened on the steering wheel. "You're from Detroit?" She nodded. "East Side. You?" "Same," I said, my mouth suddenly dry. "What district?" "8th," she said. My stomach dropped. Jake and I had worked the 8th. I lost someone there, she said, her voice suddenly soft. My husband, he was a cop too. The truck felt too small, the air too thin. I'm sorry, I managed to say. He left behind our twin girls, she continued. Maya and Zoe. I nearly drove off the road. Maya and Zoe, Jake's daughters, Jake's wife. This was Jake's widow sitting next to me, and she had no idea who I was. You okay? She asked, noticing how white my knuckles had turned on the steering wheel. Fine, I lied. Just thought I saw something in the trees. Lisa pointed to a small turnoff ahead. Pull in there. We'll check out that area on foot. The forest path was narrow and winding. As we walked deeper, I couldn't shake a growing feeling of wrongness. The trees seemed to be watching us, listening. Does anything seem strange to you? I asked Lisa. She scanned the woods, her hand resting on her gun. What do you mean? The trees, I said, the way they're arranged. She looked at me like I was crazy. Maybe I was. But the deeper we went, the stronger the feeling grew. The trees weren't random anymore. They were positioned like buildings, like streets, like... Jesus, I whispered. The clearing we entered was laid out exactly like the alley in Detroit, where Jake had died. The trees stood precisely where the buildings had been. A depression in the ground marked where his body had fallen. Even the rocks were arranged like the trash cans and dumpsters from that night. What is it? Lisa asked, watching my face. Nothing, I said quickly. Just déjà vu. But it wasn't déjà vu. It was impossible. The forest had somehow recreated the scene of my greatest failure. Like it knew, like it was watching me. Let's split up, Lisa suggested. Cover more ground. Bad idea, I said. Too quickly. We should stick together. She raised an eyebrow but didn't argue. As we continued walking, I kept seeing it. Detroit hidden in the patterns of the trees, street corners, alleys, the exact spot where Jake had bled out in my arms. And something else was wrong too. The wildlife. A group of raccoons watched us from a fallen log. Their eyes too intelligent, too calculating. They seemed to be communicating with each other, nodding and gesturing almost like humans. A deer stood at attention by a large oak, its head moving back and forth like it was on lookout duty. Above us, birds called to each other in patterns that sounded eerily like police radio codes. 10-4. Suspect spotted. Officers on scene. Lisa, I said carefully, do you notice anything strange about the animals? She frowned. They're quiet, too quiet. But they weren't quiet. They were organized, like the city gangs we used to track in Detroit. The forest was becoming the city that destroyed us both. We should head deeper, Lisa said, pointing to a trail that disappeared between two large oak trees. The reports came from around Cooper's Ridge. I nodded, but something inside me wanted to run the other way. Every step we took made that feeling worse. The trail grew narrower. Branches reached down like hands trying to grab us. Roots stuck up from the ground, almost like they wanted us to trip. Tell me about your daughters, I said, trying to keep my mind off how wrong everything felt. Lisa's face softened a little. Maya is the quiet one. Loves to read. Zoe is wild, always climbing things, asking questions. She paused. They don't smile much anymore. Not since Jake died. My throat tightened. How did it happen? Your husband, I mean. Her eyes turned cold. Drug bust gone wrong. His partner froze. Jake got shot protecting him. Each word hit me like a punch. She didn't know I was that partner, the one who got Jake killed. I'm sorry, I managed to say. Lisa shrugged. The department said his partner had a breakdown. Drinking problem. Last. I heard they shipped him somewhere else. She looked straight ahead. If I ever meet him, I don't know what I'd do. Before I could respond, a sound stopped us both. Tap, 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 like someone knocking on metal. What's that? Lisa whispered, drawing her gun. Tap, tap, tap. We followed the sound to a small clearing. In the center stood an old metal trash can, exactly like the ones from Detroit alleys. "What the hell is a trash can doing out here?" Lisa asked. I had no answer. It shouldn't be here. Nothing about this made sense. Tap, tap, tap. The sound was coming from inside the can. Lisa approached slowly, gun ready. I followed, my own weapon drawn. She lifted the lid with the barrel of her gun. Inside was a single dead crow, but as we watched, its wing moved. Tap, 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 not random. It was tapping out a police code. 1078. "Officer needs assistance." "This isn't right," Lisa said, backing away. "Something's wrong with this place." As we turned to leave, I noticed something else. The trees had moved. The path we came in on was gone. "We're being herded," I realized. "By what?" Lisa demanded. I had no answer, but a memory flashed, something I'd seen in the case files. Locals talk about something in these woods. They call it the Grassman. Lisa rolled her eyes. "Bigfoot, seriously." "Not Bigfoot," I said. "Something else, something that knows things it shouldn't." As if responding to my words, the forest changed again. The trees shifted like they were breathing. Birds flew in formation overhead, spelling out words only visible for seconds, before scattering. YOURFAULT. "Did you see that?" I asked. Lisa was staring at a deer standing 20 yards away. It was watching us with 2 human eyes. "That deer," she whispered. "It looks like—" The deer tilted its head, and for a second, it had Jake's face. Lisa gasped. I knew she'd seen it too. "We need to get out of here," I said, grabbing her arm. She pulled away. "No, I need to know what's happening." The deer turned and walked deeper into the forest. Without hesitation, Lisa followed. "Lisa, wait," I called, but she was already moving between the trees. I ran after her, branches slapping my face. The forest was changing faster now. Trees bending to form walls and hallways, rocks and fallen logs arranging themselves into furniture, leaves swirling to create curtains and doors. The forest was becoming a house. Jake and Lisa's house. I knew this place. I'd been here once, after Jake's funeral. Seen the twins looking lost in their black dresses. Seen Lisa broken and hollow-eyed. Now the forest was recreating it around us, pulling the memory from my mind. And somewhere ahead, Lisa was walking into a trap set by something that knew all our secrets. "Lisa!" I shouted, pushing through branches that seemed to reach for me. "Lisa, wait!" I found her standing in a clearing that looked exactly like Jake's living room. Tree stumps arranged like a couch and chairs, a flat rock like a coffee table, even picture frames hanging from branches, empty except for shadows that looked like faces. Lisa stood frozen, staring at it all. "What is this?" she whispered. "How is this possible?" I had no answer. The forest shouldn't know these things, couldn't know them. A sound came from deeper in the trees, like a child crying. Lisa's head snapped up. "Maya? Zoe?" She started forward. I grabbed her arm. "That's not your daughters. Think about it. They're in Detroit with your mother." She blinked, confused for a moment, then nodded. "You're right. But what is it?" The crying changed, became deeper, sadder. A man's sob. "Jake," Lisa whispered. I felt cold all over. "We need to leave. Now." But Lisa pulled away from me again. "I need to see. I need to know." She walked toward the sound, gun drawn. I followed, my own weapon ready. The forest opened into another clearing. In the center stood a figure, its back to us. It was tall, maybe 7 feet, covered in dark, matted hair or fur, but it stood on 2 legs like a man. "Police!" Lisa shouted. "Don't move!" The creature turned slowly. Its face was hidden in shadow, but I could see its eyes, yellow and glowing like streetlights. "The Grassman," I whispered. The creature tilted its head, studying us. Then it spoke. "Why didn't you shoot, Michael?" Jake's voice. Exactly Jake's voice. Lisa gasped. Her gun shook in her hands. "What are you?" she demanded. The creature stepped forward. As it moved into the light, I saw its face clearly for the first time. It wasn't a monster's face, it was human. A teenage boy with cold eyes and a gun in his hand. The kid from the alley, the one who shot Jake. But then it shifted, blurred, became something else. Part man, part animal, its features never quite settling. "You let him die," the creature said, still using Jake's voice. You hesitated. I raised my gun, hands shaking. "Stay back." The creature smiled with too many teeth. "Will you hesitate again, Michael O'Brien?" It took another step forward. I fired a warning shot over its head. The sound echoed through the forest and birds exploded from the trees. The creature didn't flinch. "What is it talking about, Michael?" Lisa asked, her voice tight. Before I could answer, the creature moved. Faster than anything should move. One moment it was 20 feet away. The next it was right in front of me, knocking the gun from my hand. Its face shifted again, becoming Jake's, exactly as he looked that night, blood on his lips, eyes dimming. "Tell my girls Daddy loved them," it whispered. I stumbled backward, fell. The creature loomed over me. Lisa fired 3 shots. The bullets hit the creature in the chest, but it didn't fall. Instead, it turned to her, its form shifting again. Now it looked like me. "Do you know who he is?" it asked Lisa, using my voice. "Do you know what he did?" Lisa kept her gun pointed at it. "Michael, get up. We need to move." The creature laughed. A horrible sound like breaking glass. "He let Jake die. He was Jake's partner." Lisa's face went white. Her gun shifted slightly, now pointing at me instead of the creature. "Is that true?" she asked. I couldn't lie anymore. "Yes." The creature smiled and backed away into the shadows. It had done what it wanted, planted the seed of hatred between us. As it disappeared into the trees, I saw its face change one last time, becoming not the gunman or Jake or me, but something that reflected my deepest fear. A coward who gets people killed. Lisa's gun didn't waver. It pointed straight at my chest, her finger tight on the trigger. "You were his partner," she said. Her voice was flat, empty. "You're the one who froze." I slowly got to my feet, hands raised. "Lisa, we need to get out of these woods first. That thing is still out there. Answer me," she demanded. "Were you Jake's partner that night?" I nodded. "Yes." Her hand shook. For a moment I thought she might shoot me right there. Instead, she lowered the gun. "We'll deal with this later. Right now we need to find a way out." The relief didn't last long. As we started walking, a smell hit me, strong and sickening. Gunpowder, spilled beer, blood on concrete, exactly like the alley where Jake died. Lisa smelled it too. "What is that?" "It's following us," I said. "The creature. It's playing with us." We quickened our pace, but the smell got stronger. Then came the sounds. Sirens. In the distance, children crying, a radio dispatcher calling for backup. "It's not real," I told Lisa. "The forest is messing with our heads." But it felt real. Everything felt real. We reached another clearing and stopped cold. The ground was wet with something dark and shining. Blood. A pool of blood exactly where Jake had fallen. Lisa made a small, broken sound. "Jake," she whispered. From the trees around us came a howl, not like any animal I'd ever heard. It started as a police siren, then morphed into a child's scream, then became a man's voice. "Why didn't you shoot him, Mike? Why did you let him kill me?" Jake's voice, but wrong, twisted and full of hate. "Don't listen," I told Lisa. "It's not him." The howl came again, closer this time. "Daddy loved them. Tell my girls Daddy loved them." Lisa covered her ears. "Make it stop." I grabbed her arm. "We need to keep moving." As we stumbled forward, the forest closed in tighter. Branches grabbed at our clothes. Roots tried to trip us. The smell of gunpowder and blood grew stronger. Then I saw something move between the trees ahead. Not the creature this time. Something smaller. A child. "Maya?" Lisa called out, her voice breaking. "Zoe?" The small figure stopped, turned. It was a little girl in a pink dress, one of the twins. "Mommy?" the child called. Lisa started forward, but I held her back. "It's not real," I insisted. "Your daughters are in Detroit, remember?" Lisa struggled against my grip. "Let me go. That's my daughter." "It's the creature," I said. "It's trying to separate us." The child's face suddenly changed, melted and reformed into the snarling face of the grass man. Then back to the little girl. "Mommy, I'm scared," it called in a perfect child's voice. Lisa stopped struggling. "You're right," she whispered. "It's not real." The child thing hissed in frustration and disappeared into the trees. We pressed on, following what looked like a trail, but the smells and sounds followed us. Gunshots echoed, sirens wailed. Jake's voice called out to us both. "Lisa, he let me die. Michael, you let me die." The forest was feeding on our guilt, our fear, our shared trauma. "Don't listen," I kept saying. "Keep moving." But with each step, the voices got louder, the smells stronger, the forest darker. And somewhere ahead, I knew the grassman was waiting, wearing Jake's face, speaking with Jake's voice, ready to make us face what we'd both been running from, our own guilt, our own monsters. Night was falling, the forest grew darker by the minute, and the trees seemed to lean in closer. "We need to find shelter," I said, looking at the darkening sky. "It's not safe out here after dark." Lisa nodded. She hadn't spoken much since the creature had tried to trick her with her daughter's image. Her face was hard, closed off. "There's a ranger station about a mile north," she said finally, "if we can find north." I looked up at the sky, but the trees blocked the stars. My phone had no signal, and the compass app didn't work. The needle just spun in circles. "The moss," Lisa said, pointing to a nearby tree. "It grows on the north side." But when we checked, we found moss growing on all sides of the trees. Nothing in this forest followed normal rules. "Let's just pick a direction and stick to it," I suggested. We chose a path and started walking. The light faded quickly, and soon we were using our flashlights. The beams seemed weak, barely cutting through the darkness. "So," Lisa said after a long silence, "you were there when Jake died." I swallowed hard. "Yes." "Tell me what happened," she demanded. "The real story, not the one in the report." I owed her that much. We were working a drug case, got a tip about a deal happening in that alley. We were supposed to wait for backup, but Jake saw the dealer was about to leave. We went in. The memory was so clear, clearer than it had been in months of drinking. The dealer ran. We chased him. Then this kid came around the corner with a gun. Lisa's flashlight beam hit my face. A kid. 15, maybe 16, skinny, scared-looking. I hesitated. Couldn't pull the trigger on a kid. I had to stop and take a breath. Jake saw I wasn't going to shoot. He moved to protect me. The kid shot him 3 times. Lisa's beam moved away from my face. And the kid? I shot him after. Too late to save Jake. The forest seemed to be listening. The wind died down. Even the creatures of the night went quiet. "Why didn't you tell me who you were?" Lisa asked. "I didn't know who you were until you mentioned the twins," I said. "By then, I was afraid." Lisa was quiet for a long time. When she spoke again, her voice was ice cold. "I've hated you for 6 months, blamed you for taking Jake from us." "I know," I said. "I blame myself too." A branch snapped somewhere in the darkness ahead. We both froze, listening. Tap, tap, tap. That sound again, like metal, like a signal. Our flashlight beams cut through the darkness, searching. They landed on a figure standing between 2 trees. Not the grassman this time. A man in a police uniform. Jake. He looked exactly like he had in life, strong, kind-faced, a small scar above his right eyebrow from a bar fight our first year as partners. "Jake," Lisa whispered. I knew it wasn't really him, couldn't be him, but he looked so real. "Lisa," the Jake thing said. "Michael, you're both here." Lisa took a step forward. I grabbed her arm. "It's not him," I reminded her. "I know," she said, "but I need to hear what it has to say." The Jake thing smiled sadly. "You're both so lost, so full of guilt." It stepped closer. Our flashlights showed no footprints where it walked. "Lisa, you told me to request a transfer to a safer district," it said. "You begged me, but I stayed because Michael needed me." Lisa's breath caught. "How do you know that? No one knew that." The Jake thing turned to me. "And Michael, you didn't hesitate because you were afraid. You hesitated because the kid reminded you of your brother." A cold feeling spread through my chest. That was true. My brother had been a drug addict, died of an overdose at 17. The kid in the alley had looked just like him. I'd never told anyone that, not even Jake. "What are you?" I demanded. The Jake thing's smile turned sad. "I'm the forest. I'm your guilt. I'm what waits in the dark when you can't face yourself." It began to change, the uniform melting away, the skin darkening, hair growing until Jake was gone and the grassman stood before us again. "I've been hunting you both," it said, "ever since you entered my forest." "Why?" Lisa asked. "Because you're both prey," it said simply. "Wounded, weak, easy to separate." It stepped closer, yellow eyes gleaming. "And now the hunt is almost over." I raised my gun. "Stay back." The creature laughed. "You won't shoot me, Michael. You never do." It was right. Every time it appeared, I froze, just like that night in the alley. The creature lunged forward suddenly, impossibly fast. It knocked me down, sent my gun flying into the darkness. Lisa fired, the gunshot deafening in the quiet forest. The bullet hit the creature in the shoulder. It howled, that horrible mix of siren and scream, and vanished into the trees. "You're bleeding," Lisa said, helping me up. My arm had a deep gash where the creature's claws had caught me. "We need to find that ranger station," I said through gritted teeth. "Now!" We hurried through the dark forest, following our flashlight. Beams. Behind us, we could hear the creature moving through the trees, always just out of sight, hunting us. We found the ranger station just as the rain started, a small wooden building with a metal roof. The door was unlocked. Inside, it was simple, one room with a desk, a radio, and a small cot in the corner. Lisa tried the radio while I looked for a first aid kit. "Nothing but static," she said, turning the dials. "Like something's blocking the signal." I found a kit under the desk and started cleaning the cut on my arm. It was deeper than I thought, still bleeding. Lisa took over, her touch gentle despite everything. "You need stitches, but this will have to do." As she worked, I watched her face. "I'm sorry," I said, "about Jake, about not telling you who I was." She didn't look up. "You said the kid looked like your brother." "Yeah, Tommy. He died when I was 25, drug overdose." Lisa finished bandaging my arm. "That's why you hesitated." It wasn't a question, but I nodded anyway. She sat back, her face unreadable in the dim light of the station's emergency lamp. "I need to tell you something." The rain drummed harder on the metal roof. "I knew who you were the moment Sheriff Miller said your name," she said. "I've known all along." The words hit me like a punch. "What?" "I requested the transfer to Ohio. When I found out you'd been sent here," she continued, "I've been tracking you for months." I stared at her. "Why?" Her eyes were cold. "I wanted to see the man who got Jake killed, wanted to look him in the eye." The pieces clicked together. "You were never here about the grass man. You were here for me." She nodded. "At first, but then something changed. Being out in those woods, seeing that creature, it made me face things I've been running from." Outside, the wind howled. Or Maybe it was the creature. Hard to tell anymore. Jake asked for that drug assignment, Lisa said quietly. He volunteered for it. I told him not to. Begged him to request a transfer to a safer district. Her voice broke slightly, but he wouldn't leave you. Said you were going through a rough time after your divorce. Said you needed a partner who had your back. I hadn't known that. Jake never told me he'd had a chance to transfer out. He stayed because of me, I whispered. Lisa looked up, her eyes wet. And I blamed him for it. Our last conversation was a fight about you, about how he put his partner ahead of his family. The rain seemed to get louder, drowning out everything else. So I came here to blame you, she continued, to make you face what you'd done. But now I realize I was running from my own guilt. Jake died because he stayed in that district, and he stayed because I made him feel like he had to choose between you and us. I shook my head. No, Jake died because I hesitated, because I couldn't. Pull the trigger. We both carry blame, Lisa said. That's what the creature knows. That's why it brought us together. A sudden bang on the roof made us both jump. Something was up there, moving around. Tap, tap, tap. That signal again. It found us, I said, grabbing my gun. The emergency lamp flickered, then went out. We were in darkness except for our flashlights. What does it want? Lisa whispered, her own weapon ready. To finish the hunt, I said. The window shattered inward. Rain and glass sprayed across the floor. A dark shape filled the opening, too big to fit through, but trying anyway. Yellow eyes gleamed. The creature's face shifted rapidly between forms. Jake, the teenage gunman, Lisa, me, the twins. You can't hide from what you are, it growled, its voice a horrible mix of all our voices. Stay back, Lisa shouted, firing a warning shot. The creature laughed. You can't hurt me with that. I'm not real. I'm what you made me. It pulled back from the window, disappearing into the storm. For a moment we thought it was gone. Then the door burst open, slamming against the wall. The creature stood there, filling the doorway, taller, darker, more monstrous than before. But its face was Jake's face, perfect in every detail. Time to finish what started in that alley. It said with Jake's voice. It stepped into the station, and the air turned cold as ice. The creature moved into the ranger station, its massive form blocking the only exit. Rain poured in through the open door, forming puddles on the wooden floor. Lisa and I backed up, until we hit the wall, nowhere left to go. What do you want? I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. The creature smiled with Jake's face. I want you to choose again, Michael. It turned to Lisa. And I want you to watch. Suddenly, the inside of the ranger station changed. The walls melted away. The floor shifted. The small room became the Detroit alley where Jake had died. No, I whispered, not again. But it was all there. The dumpsters, the fire escape, the pool of rainwater that would soon be filled with blood. Even the smell was right, wet concrete, and garbage. This isn't real, Lisa said, her gun still pointed at the creature. It's just in our heads. Does it matter? The creature asked. Real or not, the choice is the same. Ididi. It stepped back into the shadows. As it did, two new figures appeared in the alley. One was Jake, looking exactly as he had that night, alert, focused, gun drawn. The other was a teenage boy with a scared face and wild eyes, a gun shaking in his hand. Choose again, Michael. The creature's voice echoed from everywhere and nowhere. Shoot the boy to save your partner or hesitate and watch him die. Lisa grabbed my arm. Michael, don't listen. It's trying to trap you. But I was already raising my gun, pointing it at the boy who wasn't real, who couldn't be real. This time I'll do it right, I said. This time I'll save him. The boy turned toward Jake, his gun coming up. I didn't hesitate. I pulled the trigger. The gunshot was deafening in the small space. The boy fell, but as he did, his image flickered and changed. It wasn't the boy I'd shot. It was Lisa. She looked down at the blood spreading across her chest, her eyes wide with shock. Her gun clattered to the floor. "Michael," she whispered. I dropped my gun, rushed to catch her as she fell. "No, no, no, Lisa!" The alley faded back into the ranger station. The creature stood in the doorway, watching. "You chose to act this time," it said, "but look what it cost you." Lisa was heavy in my arms, her blood warm on my hands, just like Jake's had been. "This isn't real," I said desperately. "It's an illusion." But Lisa's blood felt real. Her breathing, growing shallower by the second, sounded real. "The gun is real," the creature said. "The bullet is real. Only the target was an illusion." I pressed my hand against Lisa's wound, trying to stop the bleeding. "Why are you doing this?" The creature stepped closer, its form shifting between human and monster. "Because you needed to learn. Both of you did." It knelt beside us, its yellow eyes now sad. Michael hesitated, and Jake died. Michael didn't hesitate, and Lisa died. "There is no right choice in the dark." Lisa's eyes fluttered. "The twins," she whispered. "Take care of my girls." The same words Jake had said, history repeating itself in the cruelest way. "Stay with me," I begged her. "Please, Lisa. The girls need you." The creature watched us, its face changing rapidly between forms. Jake, the teenage boy, Lisa, me, even the twins, like it couldn't decide which face to wear. "Tell them," Lisa said, her voice fading. "Tell them their daddy loved them." Her eyes closed, her breathing stopped. "No!" I screamed. "Lisa!" The creature stood, towering over us. "The hunt is over," it said. I looked up at it through tears. "What are you? What do you want?" For the first time, the creature's face settled into a single form, not human, not animal, but something in between, ancient knowing. "I am the forest," it said simply. "I am what waits in the dark to show humans what they really are." It gestured to Lisa's body. "She came to these woods hunting you. You came hunting yourself. I showed you both what you needed to see." I held Lisa tighter. "Bring her back, please." The creature tilted its head. "I can't undo what you've done. The bullet was real. The choice was yours." It stepped back toward the door. "Dawn is coming. The forest will release you then." "I'll kill you," I said, rage replacing grief. "I'll burn this whole forest down." The creature's yellow eyes seemed sad. "You can try. Many have. But the darkness is always there, waiting, inside you, inside everyone." It turned and walked out into the rain. The storm had stopped. The first grey light of dawn was breaking through the clouds. I looked down at Lisa, at the blood on my hands. Another partner dead because of me, another family destroyed. I carried Lisa's body out of the forest as the sun rose. The trees that had seemed so threatening in the dark now stood silent and ordinary. Birds sang, deer watched from a distance. Nothing moved in unnatural ways. The search party found me on the main trail, a bloody, broken man carrying a dead woman. I told them she'd been shot in a hunting accident, that I'd mistaken her for a deer in the darkness. They believed me, or pretended to. The investigation lasted 3 weeks. They questioned me again and again about what happened in those woods. I stuck to my story. There was no evidence of the grassman, no proof of anything supernatural, just a tragic accident. In the end, they ruled it unintentional homicide. I lost my badge, spent 6 months in county jail. It should have been worse. But the sheriff testified about the strange reports from the forest, about how the woods played tricks on people's minds. I didn't drink during those 6 months, or after. The whiskey couldn't drown Jake's face anymore, and now it wouldn't drown Lisa's either. When I got out, I went to Detroit. I had to see them, the twins, had to face what I'd done. Lisa's mother entered the door. She knew who I was, what had happened. I expected her to slam the door in my face. Instead, she looked at me for a long time, then stepped aside. "They're in the backyard," she said. "They still ask about their mommy and daddy every day. Maya and Zoe were 7 now, playing on a swing set. They had Jake's smile, Lisa's eyes. They looked up when I approached. "Who are you?" Maya asked. "The quiet one," Lisa had said. I knelt down to their level. "I'm Michael. I worked with your daddy and mommy." Zoe, the wild one, jumped off her swing. "Did you come to play with us?" I swallowed hard. If that's okay. I spent the afternoon pushing them on swings, listening to their stories, watching them laugh. I didn't tell them what really happened to their parents, maybe someday when they're older, but not now. Before I left, I promised to visit on their father's birthday every year. It was the least I could do. I moved back to Ohio after that, but not to Wayne National Forest. I couldn't go back there. Instead, I settled in Columbus, got a job as a substance abuse counselor, helping cops who couldn't handle what they'd seen or done, who turned to the bottle like I had. Sometimes at night, I dream of the forest, of yellow eyes watching from the darkness, of Lisa and Jake standing side by side, asking why I let them die. But sometimes the dreams are different. Sometimes the forest speaks to me with that ancient voice. There is no right choice in the dark, only the choice you make and what you become after. I've learned to live with what I've become. The man who hesitated and lost his partner, the man who didn't hesitate and lost another, the man who visits 2 little girls once a year and tells them stories about their parents, leaving out the parts they don't need to know. I've never seen the grassman again, never gone back to those woods. But sometimes, when I'm driving country roads at night and the trees crowd close to the road, I feel it watching, waiting, not for me. I've already faced my darkness, but for someone else who needs to see what they truly are, someone else who needs to learn what we become in the dark. Last week, I heard about strange reports from Wayne National Forest, animals acting unusual, trees that seem to move when no one's looking, a tall figure seen between the trees at dusk. Part of me wants to go back, to hunt the creature that destroyed my life. But a wiser part knows better. The darkness is always waiting inside the forest, inside all of us, and some hunts, once finished, should never begin again. My name is Margaret Thornton, but everyone calls me Maggie. I still see his face sometimes. Danny Brennan. Just a kid, really, barely 18. I see him in my dreams, lying there in the Korean mud, blood bubbling between his lips as he tried to speak. It was raining that day in 1952, the kind of rain that soaks through everything, turning the world into a cold, miserable soup. Our medical unit had been hit by mortar fire, chaos everywhere, screaming, bodies scattered across the field, hospital like broken dolls. I had to choose. That's what they taught us. When you can't save everyone, you have to choose who might live. 2 soldiers were brought in at the same time, a sergeant with a belly wound and young Private Brennan with shrapnel in his chest. I went to the sergeant first. He had a better chance, I told myself. By the time I got to Danny, those bright blue eyes were already going dull. His blood was so warm on my cold hands. "Mama," he whispered. Just that one word, then nothing. I still carry his dog tags. They clink against my brother Tom's when I walk. Tom didn't even make it to Korea. Mining accident back home while I was overseas. Another person I couldn't save. Sometimes I think those tags are getting heavier, like they're collecting all my guilt, weighing me down a little more each day. That's why I came to Alaska, I guess. The Tongass National Forest. Miles of nothing but trees and mountains and quiet. A place to finally outrun the voices in my head, the faces of the ones I couldn't save. But you can't outrun what's inside you. I know that now. I just didn't know something out here would be waiting. Something hungry for exactly what I brought with me, my guilt. After Korea, I couldn't go back to my old life. I tried working at a regular hospital, but the clean white walls and the beeping machines just reminded me of everything I wanted to forget. So I took my nursing skills and headed north, way north to Alaska, where the wilderness might drown out my thoughts. I got a job as the only medical person for 3 tiny logging camps spread across the Tongass National Forest. The pay wasn't much, but they gave me a cabin, a radio, and enough supplies to handle most emergencies. Plus, no one asked questions about why I jumped at loud noises or why I sometimes stared at nothing for minutes at a time. My only real friend was Kodiak, a massive Malamute I rescued from a trapper who couldn't feed him anymore. He was huge, nearly 120 pounds of muscle and fur, with eyes that seemed to understand everything. He followed me everywhere, this silent shadow who somehow made the quiet less lonely. That spring of 1962 was unusually warm. The snow had melted early, and I needed to check on the most remote camp before the seasonal workers arrived. It was a 3-day hike through dense forest. But I'd made the trip before. I packed light, just the essentials, my medical kit, some dried food, and my brother's old hunting rifle, just in case. The morning we left, Mrs. Peterson from the general store grabbed my arm. Her eyes were wide, serious. "The forest is strange this year, Maggie," she said. Her voice was quiet, like she didn't want anyone else to hear. "The old Tlingit elders say the spirits are restless. Maybe wait another week." I just smiled and patted her hand. I didn't believe in spirits. After what I'd seen in Korea, the only monsters I feared were the ones with human faces. "I'll be fine," I told her. "I've got Kodiak." As we headed into the tree line, Kodiak pressed close against my leg. He looked back at the town once, then up at me, like he was asking if we really had to go. "It's just a quick trip, boy," I said, scratching behind his ears. "We'll be back before you know it." I didn't know then that the forest was already watching us, and waiting. The first day on the trail was normal enough. The path was muddy from the early thaw, but familiar. I'd hiked it at least a dozen times before. Kodiak trotted ahead, nose to the ground, occasionally looking back to make sure I was still following. We made good time, stopping only to eat a quick lunch by a stream where I refilled our water bottles. The forest was alive with spring sounds, birds calling, squirrels chattering, the soft rush of melting snow feeding the streams. But something felt off. It started small. A bird would call, and then the exact same call would echo back, but not quite as an echo should. It came too late, or sometimes from the wrong direction. The wind would rustle through a patch of leaves, and then those same leaves would rustle again when the wind had already died. "You hear that, Kodiak?" I asked. His ears perked up and he looked over his shoulder at nothing, then again and again, like he was watching something move that I couldn't see. By mid-afternoon, I noticed Kodiak wasn't running ahead anymore. He stayed right by my side, so close I nearly tripped over him twice. His fur stood up along his spine, and every few minutes he would stop and stare back the way we had come. "What is it, boy?" I asked, but he just whined softly. I found myself checking my map more than necessary. The landmarks were all where they should be. The lightning-struck pine, the rock formation shaped like a bear's head, the small waterfall. But they all seemed somehow wrong, like paintings of places instead of the places themselves. As the daylight began to fade, I set up camp in a small clearing. Usually Kodiak would explore our campsite, marking his territory and checking for squirrels. That night, he just sat beside me, watching the trees. I built a fire and heated up some beans and coffee. The flames seemed to dance oddly, stretching, too high one moment, then almost dying out the next, despite the steady supply of wood. Just the wind, I told myself, though there wasn't any. That night in my tent, I couldn't sleep. Kodiak lay pressed against me, his body tense. Every now and then he would lift his head and growl softly at the tent wall. "It's nothing," I whispered, stroking his thick fur. "Just animals." But in my gut, I knew that wasn't true. Something was watching us. I could feel it, like the weight of eyes on my skin, I told myself I was being silly, that the forest just felt strange because of the early spring, that my imagination was playing tricks. But Kodiak knew better, and deep down, so did I. I woke up tired, my sleep broken by strange dreams I couldn't quite remember. Kodiak was already awake, sitting at the tent entrance, his ears forward, listening. I put my hand on his back and felt a constant, low tremor running through him. "Easy, boy," I said. "We'll be at the camp by nightfall." The morning fog hung between the trees like ghostly curtains. As we packed up, I kept thinking I saw shapes moving in the mist, just at the corner of my eye. But when I turned to look, there was nothing there. We headed deeper into the forest. The trail narrowed, winding between ancient trees that seemed to lean toward us as we passed. The birds had gone quiet. Even the sound of our footsteps seemed muffled, like the forest was holding its breath. Around midday, we came to a small clearing that wasn't on my map. In the center sat a campsite, a neatly arranged tent, a fire, pit with glowing embers, and 3 metal cups placed in a perfect triangle on a flat rock. "Hello?" I called out. "Anyone here?" No answer, just the soft pop of the embers. Kodiak refused to enter the clearing. He stood at the edge, hackles raised, growling deep in his throat. Curiosity pulled me forward. The fire shouldn't have been burning, not if the camp had been abandoned. I touched one of the cups. The coffee inside was still warm, but something wasn't right. The cups were arranged too perfectly, exactly the same distance apart, turned so their handles pointed in the same direction. It reminded me of how I used to organize the medical supplies in Korea, lining everything up just so, counting and recounting bandages while soldiers bled out waiting, a way to feel in control when everything was falling apart. I looked more closely at the tent. It was military issue, like the ones we used in Korea, and the bedroll inside was laid out hospital corner, neat with a small pile of personal effects beside it. My heart nearly stopped when I saw the dog tags on top of the pile. Daniel J. Brennan, blood type O+, Presbyterian. "That's not possible," I whispered. The tags I carried were warm against my skin. I reached for them, needing to confirm they were still there, still real. But before my fingers touched them, a twig snapped somewhere in the trees behind me. I whirled around, nothing there. "Hello," I called again, my voice shaking now. "Who's out there?" Kodiak barked once, sharp and urgent. His message was clear. "We need to leave." I backed away from the campsite, eyes scanning the tree line. As we reached the edge of the clearing, I glanced back one last time. The campsite was gone. No tent, no fire, no cups. Just empty forest floor covered in years of fallen leaves. My mouth went dry. I'd seen it. I'd touched the warm cup. It had been real. Hadn't it? "Come on, Kodiak," I said, my voice barely a whisper now. "Let's keep moving." We walked faster after that, pushing to reach the logging camp before dark. I kept telling myself there was a logical explanation, sleep deprivation, stress, maybe someone was playing a trick on me. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was following us, always just out of sight, and I couldn't forget those dog tags, identical to the ones I'd carried for 10 years, the ones that belonged to a dead boy who had whispered "Mama" with his last breath in a country thousands of miles away. I barely slept that night. We made camp in a spot with good visibility, my back against a large boulder. I kept the fire burning high and my rifle close. Kodiak didn't sleep either. He sat, facing the darkness, his body tense as a bowstring. Dawn came with a heavy mist that turned the forest into a maze of gray shadows. My hands shook as I made coffee, spilling grounds on my pants. I was starting to doubt myself. Maybe I was sick. Maybe the isolation was finally getting to me after years of hiding from my memories. "We'll reach the camp today," I told Kodiak, needing to hear a voice, even my own. "There'll be people there. Everything will make sense again. We set off through the fog. The forest felt wrong in ways I couldn't explain. Trees that should have been familiar looked twisted and strange. Paths that should have led one way seemed to curve back on themselves. Twice I had to check my compass. Sure, we were going in circles despite walking straight. By midday, the fog had lifted, but the sky remained a flat, colorless gray. No sun, no clouds, just nothing. Like someone had painted over the world. I pulled out my radio to check in with the main camp. Usually, it only picked up static this far out, but I tried anyway, needing some connection to the normal world. The static came as expected, but then voices. Faint at first, then clearer. Apply pressure directly to the wound. A woman's voice, my voice. Elevate the limb above the heart. Still my voice, but flatter like a recording. Morphine 1 cc for severe pain. Do not administer if blood pressure drops below. I nearly dropped the radio. Those were my words, the exact instructions I'd recited hundreds of times in Korea. Words I'd drilled into the head of every medic and nurse under my supervision. "Hello, who is this?" I demanded, my voice cracking. "This is Margaret Thornton. Identify yourself." The radio crackled, and then a young man's voice came through, weak and strained. "Doc, it hurts, Doc. Why didn't you come sooner?" Danny Brennan's voice. A voice I hadn't heard in 10 years, except in my nightmares. "This isn't funny!" I shouted into the radio. "Who is this? How are you doing this?" Kodiak suddenly lunged forward, barking wildly at something in the trees ahead. I dropped the radio and raised my rifle, heart hammering against my ribs. "Who's there?" I called out, trying to keep my voice steady. "Show yourself." The forest went completely silent. Even the sound of the wind in the leaves stopped. In that terrible stillness, I heard footsteps, soft, deliberate steps coming closer through the undergrowth. Kodiak's barking turned to whimpers. He backed up until he was pressed against my legs, still facing whatever was coming. A figure emerged from between the trees. It looked like a man, but moved all wrong, too fluid, like its joints weren't quite solid. It stayed just far enough away that I couldn't make out its face clearly. "Hello, Maggie," it said in my brother's voice. Tom's voice, exactly as I remembered it. "You've been carrying me around for a long time now." I raised the rifle higher, my finger trembling on the trigger. "You're not my brother. My brother is dead." The figure tilted its head like a curious bird. "Yes, because you weren't there to save him, were you? You were too busy saving strangers in Korea." My throat closed up. That was my deepest, most private guilt, one I'd never spoken aloud to anyone. The thought that if I'd been home instead of overseas, I might have saved Tom from the mining collapse. The figure took a step closer, and I saw its face shift, features flowing like wax. For a moment it looked like Tom, then Danny Brennan, then a Korean child I'd failed to save when we ran out of antibiotics. "What are you?" I whispered. It smiled, with too many teeth. "I'm what feeds on guilt, Margaret Thornton, and yours is the richest I've tasted in a very long time." I fired the rifle. The shot echoed through the forest, but the figure was no longer there. Just empty air where it had stood a second before. Kodiak howled, a sound of pure fear that chilled me to the bone. We ran, blind, desperate, running through the trees, no longer caring about the path or direction. Just away from whatever that thing was. But even as we ran, I knew the truth. You can't outrun something that feeds on what's inside you. We ran until my lungs burned and my legs gave out. I collapsed against a tree, gasping for breath. Kodiak paced in circles around me, still alert, still watching the forest. "What was that thing?" I whispered, more to myself than to Kodiak. As the panic faded, my nurse's training kicked in. Assess the situation, stay calm, think logically. I pulled out my map with shaking hands, trying to figure out where we were. But the landmarks didn't match up anymore. Nothing looked familiar. We were lost. Night was coming. I knew we needed shelter, water, a defensible position, basic survival. I found a small clearing with a fallen log on one side and a steep rock face on the other. At least nothing could sneak up on us from behind. I gathered wood for a fire, my rifle never more than an arm's reach away. Kodiak wouldn't leave my side, not even to drink from the small stream nearby. I had to bring water to him in my cupped hands. As darkness fell, I built the fire higher than was wise, needing its light more than I feared what it might attract. I sat with my back against the rock, Kodiak pressed against my side, and waited. I didn't have to wait long. It came not as a shape in the darkness, but as a voice just beyond the firelight. "Doc? Are you there, Doc?" Danny Brennan stepped into the circle of light. He wore his army fatigues just like the last time I saw him, but now there was a gaping hole in his chest, blood soaking through the fabric. Dark, fresh blood that dripped onto the forest floor. "You're not real," I said, raising the rifle. "You're not him." "Why didn't you choose me first, Doc?" he asked. His voice was exactly as I remembered, young, with that slight southern drawl. "The sergeant was already too far gone, you knew that. But you chose him anyway." "I made a medical decision," I said, my voice breaking. "I had to triage." "You were afraid," Danny said, taking another step closer. "Afraid because I reminded you of your brother. Afraid to watch another young man die." The fire flickered, and suddenly it wasn't Danny standing there, but Tom. My brother looked just like he had the last time I saw him alive, except for the crushed side of his skull where the mine support beam had fallen. "You could have saved me from that mine collapse, Maggie," Tom said. "You had the training. If you'd been home instead of playing hero in Korea—" "Stop it!" I whispered, tears streaming down my face. "Please stop!" The fire flickered again. Now a Korean child stood there, a little girl, no more than 7 years old. Her stomach was distended from infection, her eyes glassy with fever. I remembered her. I'd given our last dose of morphine to an American soldier instead of her. "You gave medicine to the soldier instead of me," she said in perfect English, though the real child had never spoken a word I understood. "Because his pain mattered more than mine." Kodiak growled, low and threatening, placing himself between me and the child. But the girl ignored him, her dead eyes fixed on mine. "What are you?" I asked again. "The Tlingit call me Kushtaka," the child said, her voice changing, deepening. No longer a child's voice, but something ancient and hungry. "Others have different names. I am what waits in the spaces between trees. I am what listens when you whisper your guilt in the dark." "Why me?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. The child smiled, showing teeth that were suddenly sharp and wrong in her small face. "Because you carry so many dead with you, Margaret Thornton. So many failures, so much delicious guilt." The creature stepped closer, and Kodiak lunged forward, barking furiously. The child's form rippled like water, becoming something else. Something with too many limbs and too many eyes, before settling back into the shape of the little girl. "Your guilt is a feast," it said, "and I am very, very hungry." I raised the rifle and fired again, the shot deafening in the small clearing. The bullet passed right through the child, who didn't even flinch. She just smiled wider. "You can't shoot your memories, Margaret," she said. "And that's all I am. I'm everything you can't forget." That's when I realized the true horror of what I was facing. This thing, this Kushtaka, wasn't just some monster from Tlingit legend. It was a mirror, reflecting back every patient I'd lost, every life I'd failed to save, every choice that haunted me, and I had no idea how to fight it. The creature left as suddenly as it had appeared, melting back into the darkness beyond my fire, but it didn't really leave. I could feel it watching, waiting, testing me. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw their faces. Danny, Tom, the Korean child, and dozens of others, all looking at me with accusing eyes. Morning came with a heavy fog that smelled wrong. Not the clean, earthy smell of the forest, but the sharp sting of antiseptic mixed with the sickly sweet odor of gangrene. The exact smell of the field hospital in Korea, where I'd learned to decide who lived and who died. It's not real, I told myself. It's in your head. But Kodiak smelled it too. He kept sniffing the air, whining softly. We needed to move, find our way back to civilization, to places where ancient things didn't whisper from between the trees. I packed up camp, trying to ignore how my hands shook. The dog tags against my chest felt heavier than ever and strangely warm, like they were burning into my skin. The forest had changed overnight. Trees stood where no trees had been before. Paths disappeared into solid rock. My compass spun uselessly, the needle twirling in complete circles. We'll follow the stream, I decided, pointing to the small creek nearby. Water always leads somewhere. As we walked, I felt something wet and sticky on my hands. I looked down to see them covered in blood, bright red and fresh. I gasped and tried to wipe it off on my pants, but it wouldn't come off. It just seemed to spread, covering my fingers, my wrists, running up my arms. It's not real, I said again, my voice high and tight. It's not real. But it felt real, warm and slick between my fingers. The metallic taste of pennies filled my mouth, though I hadn't touched my lips. And in my ears, I heard the sound of heartbeats, dozens of heartbeats, all out of sync, all gradually slowing until they stopped, one by one. The heartbeats of everyone. I couldn't save. Kodiak pressed against my leg, whimpering softly. When I looked down at him, his eyes were full of a very human concern. He could see my fear, even if he couldn't see what I was seeing. "I'm okay, boy," I lied, patting his head with hands that only I could see were drenched in blood. "We're going to be okay." We followed the stream for hours, though time didn't seem to work right anymore. The sun never moved in the sky, the shadows never shifted. My watch had stopped at 10:17, the hands frozen in place. Then the stream itself began to change. The clear water turned rusty, then dark red. Blood. I was walking alongside a stream of blood. I stopped, swaying on my feet. This couldn't be happening. People didn't just lose their minds like this. Did they? "What do you want?" I shouted into the forest. "Why are you doing this to me?" No answer came, just the soft gurgle of the bloodstream and the whisper of wind through leaves that sounded almost like voices, almost like names. Danny, Tom, so many others. I felt something touch my shoulder, cold, damp fingers. I spun around, but no one was there, just trees and mist. The touch came again, on my other shoulder, then my back, my neck, ghostly hands, pawing at me from all directions. I screamed and started running, crashing through the underbrush. Kodiak barked and ran after me, trying to keep up. The hands kept coming, kept touching. And now voices joined them, whispering directly into my ears. "Why didn't you save me, Doc? You let me die, Maggie. It hurts so much." I ran until I tripped over a root and fell hard, the breath knocked out of me. As I lay there gasping, the forest around me went completely silent. The hands stopped, the voices stopped, everything stopped, except for the sound of something large moving. Through the trees toward me, something that breathed with wet, heavy breaths, something hungry. I scrambled to my feet as Kodiak planted himself between me and whatever was coming. His hackles were raised, teeth bared, but his growl sounded afraid. "Run, Kodiak," I whispered, grabbing for my rifle only to realize I'd dropped it when I fell. "Please, boy, run." He ignored me, of course, loyal to the end. The thing that emerged from the trees wasn't Danny or Tom or any of my other ghosts. It was something else, something worse. It looked almost human, but wrong in ways that made my stomach turn. Its skin seemed to ripple and shift, like it couldn't decide what shape to hold. Its eyes were black pools that reflected nothing. "So much pain," it said in a voice that wasn't quite a voice, more like the idea of sound. "So much delicious guilt." Kodiak lunged at it, jaws snapping, but the creature moved with impossible speed, sidestepping his attack. Then it reached out one long arm and touched my dog on the head. Just a touch. That's all it took. Kodiak froze mid-stride. A shudder ran through his massive body. When he turned to face me, his eyes were different. Black, empty, like the creature's. "No," I whispered. "Please, no." Kodiak stalked toward me, his movement stiff and wrong. This wasn't my dog anymore. This was something else wearing his body. "He's mine now," the creature said. "Everything you love becomes mine in the end." I backed away slowly. "Kodiak, it's me, it's Maggie. You know me, boy." For a moment, just a moment, I thought I saw a flicker of recognition in those black eyes. A hint of the loyal friend I'd saved, who'd saved me from my loneliness in return. Then it was gone. Kodiak sprang at me, teeth aiming for my throat. I dodged, feeling his jaws snap shut inches from my face. I turned and ran, hearing him crash. Through the underbrush behind me, the forest blurred around me as I ran blindly, branches whipping my face, roots trying to trip me. I could hear Kodiak gaining on me, his breathing harsh and unnatural. Then the ground disappeared beneath my feet. I fell, tumbling through empty air, a scream tearing from my throat. I hit the slope of a ravine and rolled, pain exploding in my shoulder, my hip, my head. Finally, I slammed into something solid, a fallen tree that stopped my descent. Dazed, I looked up to see Kodiak standing at the edge of the ravine above me. He was looking down, those black eyes fixed on mine. But something was happening. His body trembled like he was fighting against some invisible force. His head shook, once, twice. And then his eyes, his real eyes, warm brown and full of intelligence, were looking at me, just for a second, just long enough for me to see my friend one last time. Then, deliberately, he took a step backward, away from the edge, away from me. Another step back. "Kodiak," I called, confused. He barked once, a clear, normal bark, his bark. Then he turned and disappeared from view. I heard a scuffle above, growling, a yelp of pain, then silence. "Kodiak!" I screamed, trying to climb the steep slope, slipping in the mud, my injured shoulder screaming in protest. "Kodiak!" No answer came. It took me nearly an hour to find a way back up the ravine. My shoulder was probably dislocated, but the pain felt distant, unimportant. All that mattered was finding Kodiak. When I finally reached the spot where he'd stood, there was nothing there. No sign of my dog or the creature, just empty forest. I searched frantically, calling his name, until my voice gave out. The light was fading now, the forest growing dark. I was alone, injured, lost. And then I saw it, hanging from a low branch nearby. Kodiak's collar, the one with the little metal tag I'd had engraved with his name and mine. It was still warm, like it had just been removed. Hanging beside it was a small piece of paper, folded once. With shaking hands, I opened it. In handwriting that looked disturbingly like my own were the words, "Some things are worth dying for." I sank to my knees, clutching the collar to my chest. The tears came then, hot and unstoppable. Kodiak was gone. My friend, my protector, my one constant companion in this lonely life I'd built. And he hadn't just died, he'd sacrificed himself. In that moment, when his true self had broken through, he'd chosen to lead the creature away from me, to save me, even knowing what it would cost him. As darkness fell completely around me, I felt more alone than I ever had before. But something else was growing alongside my grief. Anger, this thing, this Kushtaka had taken enough from me. I wouldn't let it take anyone else, even if I had to die trying to stop it. I don't know how long I sat there in the dark, holding Kodiak's collar. Minutes, Hours, time had lost all meaning in this nightmare forest, but eventually the cold seeped into my bones, forcing me to move. My shoulder throbbed with every heartbeat. Using my belt and a stick, I made a crude sling to immobilize it. The pain cleared my head a little. Pain was real. I could use it to anchor myself. I needed a plan. I needed a weapon. But how do you fight something that feeds on guilt? Something that can wear the faces of your dead? I remembered what Mrs. Peterson had said before I left town. The old Tlingit elders say the spirits are restless. She'd known, or at least she'd suspected. What else did the Tlingit know about these creatures? I searched my memory for scraps of stories I'd heard during my years in Alaska. The Kushtaka, ottermen, tricksters, shapeshifters. They lured people into the forest, drove them mad, stole their souls. But there had to be a way to fight them. Every monster had a weakness. As I stumbled through the darkness, one memory surfaced. A story told by an old Tlingit woman who'd come to the clinic with pneumonia last winter. She'd been feverish, drifting in and out of lucidity. She'd grabbed my arm and told me that if the Kushtaka ever came for me, I should burn cedar and spruce. Together, the smoke would drive them away. I had neither cedar nor spruce, but in my pack I did have something else, a small bundle of herbs given to me by that same old woman when she recovered. For healing, she'd said, for when medicine isn't enough. I'd kept it out of politeness, never expecting to use it, but now I found a sheltered spot between two large rocks and built a small fire with trembling hands. Then I reached into my pack for the bundle of dried herbs, wrapped in a scrap of red cloth. Just as my fingers closed around it, a voice spoke from directly behind me. "That won't save you, Maggie." I spun around to see Tom standing there. My brother, whole and uninjured, looking exactly as he had the last time I saw him alive. "You're not my brother," I said, clutching the herb bundle tighter. "No," he agreed, "but I know how to hurt you just like he would." His form shimmered, and suddenly he was lying on the ground, half crushed by an invisible weight, blood trickling from his mouth, exactly as he must have looked in his final moments in that mine. "You could have saved me," he gasped, "if you'd been there." I backed away, shaking my head. I couldn't have known. I was doing my job, saving people, not the ones who mattered most. Another voice joined in, and Danny Brennan stepped out of the shadows, chest torn open and bleeding. "You let me die, Doc. You chose wrong." "I did the best I could," I said, tears streaming down my face. "I tried to save everyone." "But you couldn't," the Kushtaka said, now speaking with both voices at once. "And that's why you'll die here, alone, just like all of them." I fumbled with the herb bundle, trying to untie it with one hand. The Kushtaka watched me, amused. "Do you think some dried leaves will stop me?" it asked. "I am ancient. I have fed on guilt since the first human learned to feel shame." Finally, the bundle came open, releasing a sweet, pungent smell. Cedar, spruce, and other herbs I couldn't identify. I threw it onto the fire. The flames turned blue-green, and thick smoke billowed up, much more than should have come from such a small bundle. The Kushtaka hissed and stepped back, its forms, both Tom and Danny now, wavering like heat mirages. "You know nothing of power," it snarled. "Nothing of choice." The smoke swirled around us, and suddenly the forest was gone. We were standing in a military field hospital, the one from Korea. Two cots appeared before me. On one lay Tom, crushed and bleeding. On the other, Danny Brennan, chest torn open by shrapnel. Both were still alive. Both were looking at me with desperate, pleading eyes. "Choose," the Kushtaka said, its voice coming from everywhere and nowhere. "You have medicine for one. Who lives? Who dies?" In my hand appeared a small cedar bundle, smoking gently, the healing medicine the old woman had given me. "This isn't real," I said. This is another trick. Is it? The Kushtaka asked. Or is it the choice you've been running from all these years? The one that broke you? Tom reached out a bloodied hand. Maggie, please, I'm your brother. Danny coughed, blood bubbling on his lips. Doc, it hurts. I looked between them, these two young men I'd failed. One by not being there, one by making the wrong choice. The smoke from the cedar bundle grew thicker, wrapping around my hand like a living thing. It seemed to be trying to pull me toward one of them. But which one? Choose, the Kushtaka repeated, or watch them both die again. Time seemed to slow. In that moment, I understood what this was. Not just a torment, but a test. The creature wasn't just feeding on my guilt. It was trying to make me repeat my failure, to choose wrong again. But what was the right choice? Then I knew. With absolute clarity, I knew. I stepped toward Danny Brennan, the young private I'd failed in Korea, the one whose dog tags I'd carried for 10 years. I choose him, I said, placing the smoking bundle on his chest. The Kushtaka screamed, a sound like ice cracking and trees falling and wind howling all at once. The illusion shattered around us, the field hospital dissolving back into forest, but Danny remained, lying on the ground, the cedar smoke curling around his wound. And for a moment, just a moment, he looked at me with clear, pain-free eyes. "Thank you, Doc," he whispered. Then he was gone, leaving only the smoking bundle on the forest floor. The Kushtaka stood a few feet away, its form unstable, shifting rapidly between human and something else. Something with too many limbs and too many eyes. "How?" it rasped. "How did you know?" "Because guilt isn't just about regret," I said, my voice stronger than it had been in days. "It's about learning, about doing better next time." The creature writhed, seeming to fold in on itself. Your guilt was so rich, so perfect. Not guilt, I corrected, grief. And grief can heal if you let it. With a final, terrible shriek, the Kushtaka collapsed into itself, like a star imploding and vanished, leaving behind nothing but a cold wind that rattled the trees. I stood alone in the sudden silence, hardly daring to believe it was over, but somehow I knew it was. Dawn broke over the forest, real dawn with real sunlight filtering through the trees. Birds sang their morning songs. The world felt solid again, no longer a nightmare playground for ancient creatures. I gathered what remained of my belongings, my pack, the empty herb bundle, Kodiak's collar. My rifle was gone, lost somewhere in the chaos of the night before, but I didn't need it anymore. As I prepared to find my way back to civilization, I realized something strange. The forest no longer felt unfamiliar. The landmarks were where they should be. The paths were clear. My compass pointed steadily north. The Kushtaka was gone, but something else had changed too. Something inside me. For 10 years, I'd carried conversations with my dead. Silent, one-sided talks with Danny and Tom and all. The others I couldn't save. I'd wake up in the middle of the night, arguing with them, explaining my choices, begging forgiveness they couldn't give. But now I could hear the silence in my own head. The voices were quiet. I started walking, following my compass. After a few hours, I recognized where I was. The logging camp was close, maybe an hour's hike to the east, but I didn't head that way, not yet. First, I found a small clearing with a view of the mountains. I sat on a fallen log and took the dog tags from around my neck, Danny's and Tom's, warm from my skin. "Danny Brennan," I said out loud, holding his tags. It was the first time I'd said his name aloud since Korea. Private, blood type O positive, Presbyterian. My voice echoed slightly in the clearing. It felt good to say his name, real. "Thomas Thornton," I continued, holding my brother's tags. "Minor, blood type A negative, terrible poker player, best brother anyone could ask for." Tears came, but they weren't the desperate, guilty tears I'd cried for years. They were cleaner somehow. Just grief, without the poison of guilt. I didn't bury the tags. That felt too much like hiding, and I was done hiding. Instead, I tied them to a branch of a young spruce tree where the sun could catch them and make them shine. "I'm sorry I couldn't save you," I said to both of them. "But I did the best I could, and that has to be enough." For the first time in 10 years, the silence that followed felt like peace, not accusation. I made it to the logging camp by mid-afternoon. The foreman was shocked to see me alone, injured, wild-eyed. He asked about Kodiak. I told him my dog had died protecting me from a bear. It wasn't exactly a lie. They radioed for a bush plane to take me back to town the next morning. The camp doctor, really just a logger with first aid training, set my dislocated shoulder properly and gave me something for the pain. That night, I slept without nightmares for the first time in a decade. 3 months later, I left Alaska. Not running this time, but moving forward. I went back to school, specializing in trauma counseling. 2 years after that, I started working at a VA hospital, helping veterans who carried their own ghosts from Korea and now Vietnam. I never told anyone the full story of what happened in the Tongass. Who would believe me? But sometimes, when a young soldier sits across from me, eyes haunted by the faces of friends he couldn't save, I share a little piece of what I learned. Guilt can be a predator. It can consume you if you let it, but grief can heal if you give it a voice, if you speak the names of your dead out loud and honor their memory instead of drowning in regret. I still have Kodiak's collar. It hangs above my desk at the hospital, a reminder that some things are worth dying for, and some things are worth living for too. As for the Kushtaka, I don't know if it's truly gone or just waiting for someone else carrying enough guilt to feed it. The old stories say these creatures are nearly impossible to kill, but I do know this: it no longer hungers for me. My guilt is not gone. I don't think it ever will be completely, but it no longer defines me. It no longer feeds anything but my determination to help others carry their own burdens. Sometimes at night I think I hear Kodiak's nails clicking on the floor of my apartment. A phantom sound, of course, just memory playing tricks. But I like to think he's still watching over me in his way, still protecting me from the things that lurk in the shadows, still reminding me that love is stronger than guilt, stronger than grief, maybe even stronger than death itself. My name is David Fletcher. I'm 39 years old, and I've spent almost half my life working in the coal mines of West Virginia. The mines have taken just about everything from me now. I remember that hospital room like it was yesterday. The smell of disinfectant trying to cover up the smell of sickness, the beeping of machines, my own ragged breathing as I lay there, the black lung eating me from the inside out. 20 years of coal dust packed into my lungs, making each breath feel like I was drowning on dry land. My boy Jamie sat beside me, holding my hand. His fingers were clean, no coal dust under the nails yet. At 16, his face still had that softness of youth, but his eyes were as old as the mountains. Mining families grow up fast around here. "Dad, when you get better, I want you to teach me to work the mines," Jamie said, his voice steady, but his fingers trembling in mine. "I can help with the bills." I wanted to scream. I wanted to tell him he'd never set foot in those death traps. But I couldn't find the breath for it. Instead, I just squeezed his hand and whispered, "We'll see. Son, the doctor told me I had maybe 5 years left if I stayed out of the mines. 5 years. Jamie would only be 21, too young to lose his father, but folks around here are used to early goodbyes. 3 weeks after I got out of that hospital, I testified about the safety violations at the Black River Mining Company. I told them about the supports that weren't up to code, about the gas levels nobody was checking right, about the corners they cut that were going to get people killed. The mine bosses sat there with stone faces. The safety inspector wrote things down, but wouldn't meet my eye. I knew right then that nothing would change. Fletcher's just bitter about his condition. I overheard one of the bosses say as I left. Don't worry about it. Production can't stop for every little thing. A week later, Jamie came home excited. Dad, I got a job at the mine. His eyes were bright with pride. I start on Monday. I can help with your medicine now. My heart dropped like an elevator with cut cables. I argued, I yelled, I even begged. But times were hard, and jobs were scarce. My medical bills were piling up, and Jamie was stubborn, just like his mother had been before the cancer took her. It's just temporary, Dad, he promised. Just until you're better. His first week went fine. I waited up every night until he came home, covered in coal dust but smiling. He was working in Section C, the exact section I had warned them about. On the 9th day, I was sitting on our porch when I heard the sirens. In mining towns, sirens only mean one thing. My legs gave out before I even stood up. The collapse happened exactly where I said it would. The supports gave way, just like I warned. 7 men were trapped. 3 made it out. Jamie wasn't one of them. They brought his body home 2 days later. He looked peaceful, almost clean. They'd washed the coal dust off his face, but I could still see it under his fingernails, just like mine. At the funeral, the mine boss had the nerve to call it a tragic accident. An accident, like it couldn't have been prevented, like I hadn't spelled out exactly how it would happen just weeks before. That night, alone in our house that felt too big and too empty, I burned my mining clothes in the backyard. As the flames ate up the coal-stained fabric, I made a promise to Jamie. I would make them pay attention. I would make them listen. No, more sons would die because warnings went unheeded. I didn't know then that the warnings were just beginning. I didn't know that something in those woods, something ancient and terrible, had taken notice of our pain. Something that fed on tragedy and the bitter taste of too late. I couldn't have known that the real horror was just beginning. It started with the birds. 3 weeks after we buried Jamie, I woke up to find 7 dead blackbirds in my front yard. They were laid out in a perfect circle, like someone had placed them there on purpose. But no one had. I buried them out back and tried not to think about it. 7 birds, 7 miners lost in the past year. Just a weird coincidence, I told myself. 2 days later, there were 12 birds. Not in a circle this time, but in a shape that looked like the number 24. I stared at them for a long time, my coffee going cold in my hand. Something cold crawled up my spine. 24 days later, the chemical plant over in Morgantown had a small fire. 2 workers got hurt. I read about it in the paper and felt that same cold feeling again. My TV started acting up next. The picture would go fuzzy, then clear up to show places I didn't recognize. Once, I swear it showed the inside of the chemical plant before it went back to normal. Another time it showed the elementary school with cracks running up the walls. Cracks that weren't there when I drove past it the next day. I thought I was losing my mind. Grief does that to people, they say. Then I met Rebecca Stone. She showed up at my door one rainy Tuesday, notebook in hand and a camera hanging around her neck. Mr. Fletcher, I'm Rebecca Stone from the Gazette. I'm doing a story on industrial accidents in the region. I'd like to talk about your testimony regarding the Black River mine. She was tall, with dark hair pulled back tight, and eyes that looked like they never missed a thing. I almost shut the door in her face. I was tired of talking about the mine, tired of no one listening. People are listening now, she said, like she could read my thoughts. There's been a pattern of accidents. Your mine collapse, the fire at Morgantown Chemical, the structural issues they just found at Wilson Elementary. My blood went cold. What did you say about the school? They found cracks in the foundation yesterday, had to evacuate the kids. You hadn't heard? The school, just like I'd seen on my TV. I let her in. We talked for hours. I told her about Jamie, about my warnings that no one heeded. I didn't tell her about the birds or the TV. Not yet. Rebecca had a theory. She thought someone was cutting corners across multiple industries in the area. Safety violations for profit. She'd been tracking accident reports, inspection records, following the money. "There's a pattern here," she said, spreading papers across my kitchen table. "I just can't quite see it yet." I started helping her. What else did I have to do? My lungs were shot, my son was gone, and tracking down the people responsible gave me something to live for. That's when things got stranger. I started noticing shadows that didn't move right. People walking to the factory down the road, their shadows dragging a few steps behind, like their shadows knew something bad was waiting at work. I pointed it out to Rebecca one morning as we sat in my truck outside the steel mill. "Watch that man there, watch his shadow." She squinted. "I don't see anything wrong." "It's lagging. The shadow is moving a second too late." She gave me a look, the kind people give when they think grief has cracked you open. "Take a picture," I said. "Your camera might see what you can't." She humored me, snapping a photo of the workers heading into the morning shift. When she looked at the image on her digital camera, her face went white. "David, there are people in this picture who aren't there." She turned the camera so I could see. Among the workers walking to the mill were ghostly figures, faded, transparent, but clearly people, and they were staring right at the camera. "Who are they?" she whispered. I didn't know then, but I would soon find out. That night I dreamed of Jamie. He was standing at the edge of the woods behind our house, pointing into the darkness between the trees. When I tried to go to him, he shook his head. "It's coming, Dad," he said. "It knows you can see." I woke up to the sound of wings, huge, heavy wings, like a giant bat was flying over the house. I ran to the window and saw something large disappear into the trees, something that wasn't a bird or anything else I could name. The next morning, they found 3 workers dead at the steel mill. Carbon monoxide leak, they said. An accident, they said. But I knew better now. These weren't accidents, and whatever was out there in the woods, it was trying to tell me something. I just had to figure out what before more people died. Rebecca started coming over every day. We spread maps across my kitchen table, marking every accident, every close call. Red pins for deaths, blue pins for injuries, yellow for near misses that could have been worse. "The pattern doesn't make sense," Rebecca said, frowning at our map. "These companies don't share owners or board members. Some are union, some aren't. What connects them?" I had a feeling, but it wasn't something I could explain easily, not without sounding crazy. Instead, I pointed to the forest that stretched between all our pins. "Monongahela," I said. "The forest touches all these places." Rebecca looked doubtful. "A forest can't cause industrial accidents, David." I knew that. But something in the forest might. That afternoon, we drove out to the edge of the woods near the old Thompson mill. The place had been shut down for years, but Rebecca had heard rumors they were starting it up again. We wanted to check it out, see if they were cutting corners like the others. The mill sat like a sleeping giant at the edge of the trees. Rust covered most of the metal, and vines grew up the sides of the buildings. Men in hard hats moved around the yard, taking measurements, writing on clipboards. "New owners," Rebecca explained. "They're reopening next month. 200 jobs coming back to the area. Good news for a town that needed it." But something felt wrong as we watched. The shadows around the mill seemed darker than they should be in the afternoon sun. They stretched toward the forest, like fingers reaching for something. I lifted my binoculars to get a better look at the workers. That's when I noticed something that made my skin crawl. "Becca," I said quietly, "look at the shadows of those men by the east entrance." She took the binoculars and looked. "What am I looking for?" "Count the men, then count the shadows." She was quiet for a long moment. Then, "There are 6 men, but 7 shadows." The extra shadow didn't belong to anyone. It was larger than the others, stretched and distorted. As we watched, it seemed to move on its own, sliding along the ground toward the forest. Rebecca grabbed her camera and started taking pictures. Later, when we looked at them back at my house, we saw something even stranger. In 3 of the photos, standing at the edge of the trees, was a tall, dark figure. Its shape was almost human, but not quite. Too tall, too thin. And where its face should be, there were 2 red points of light. "What is that?" Rebecca whispered, zooming in on her camera screen. "I don't know," I said. But deep down, I was starting to understand. That night, the dreams came again. Jamie standing at the edge of the woods. But this time, he wasn't alone. Behind him stood the figure from the photos, its red eyes glowing in the darkness. "It's trying to warn us, Dad," Jamie said in my dream. "Like you tried to warn them about the mine." I woke up covered in sweat, the taste of coal dust in my mouth, even though I hadn't been near a mine in months. The next day, Rebecca came over with a book from the local library. "I did some research," she said, setting the book down on the table. It was old, the cover faded. "Legends of the Monongahela." She flipped to a page marked with a slip of paper. There was a crude drawing that made my heart stop, a tall, winged creature with glowing red eyes. "The locals call it the Mothman," she said. "It's been spotted throughout history, always before. Disasters, bridge collapses, mine accidents, floods. It doesn't cause the disasters," I said, suddenly certain. "It warns about them." "Like a premonition?" Rebecca asked. I shook my head. "Like a witness. It sees what's coming because of people's choices, their shortcuts, their greed." We spent the rest of the day going through Rebecca's photos. In every one taken near an accident site, we found the figure lurking somewhere in the background. Always watching, always with those red eyes that seemed to stare right into the camera. But the most disturbing discovery came when Rebecca looked more closely at the ghostly figures in her steel mill photo. She zoomed in on their faces, one by one. "David," she said, her voice shaking, "I know these people." She pulled out a newspaper from her bag. It was the article about the carbon monoxide leak at the mill, the 3 workers who died. "These are the men who died the next day. My camera caught them before the accident happened." A chill ran through me. The Mothman doesn't just see what's coming, it sees who's going to die. That evening, as the sun set, I stood on my back porch, looking toward the forest. For a brief moment, I thought I saw 2 red lights between the trees, watching me. Then they were gone. Rebecca was still inside, going through more photos. I hadn't told her my newest fear. In one of her pictures, barely visible in the background, standing next to the Mothman at the edge of the trees, was Jamie, my dead son, watching us with sad eyes. Whatever was happening, it was getting closer. And I was starting to think that the Mothman wasn't just warning us about disasters that were coming. It was showing us how to stop them. I didn't tell Rebecca about seeing Jamie in the photo. Some things are too hard to share, even with someone who believes you about everything else. But that night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the Thompson Mill reopening, about those workers whose shadows reached for the forest. Around midnight, I gave up on sleep and went for a drive. I told myself I was just clearing my head, but my truck somehow found its way to the edge of the forest, near the mill. The moon was full, lighting up the empty parking lot. The workers were long gone, but lights still shone inside the main building. Security, probably. I sat in my truck, engine off, just watching. That's when I smelled it, methane gas and coal dust. The exact smell from the mine the day Jamie died. But I was nowhere near a mine. My truck windows were closed. The smell was inside with me. "I know you're there," I said out loud, my voice sounding small in the quiet truck. "I know you're trying to tell me something." The smell got stronger. Then came a sound like wings beating, so powerful my truck shook. I looked in my rear-view mirror and saw nothing. But when I looked forward again, it was standing in front of my truck, the Mothman. It was tall, taller than any man I'd ever seen. Its body was dark, almost black, with a shape that wasn't quite human. broad shoulders that narrowed to a thin waist, long arms that hung down past where knees would be. And those wings, huge things that stretched out wider than my truck, leathery, like a bat's, but somehow wrong. But it was the eyes that held me, two perfect circles of burning red light, like coals in a furnace. They didn't blink. They just stared right into me. I should have been scared. Maybe I was. But mostly I felt a deep sadness looking at those eyes. They weren't angry or evil. They were full of sorrow, like they'd seen too much tragedy. The creature took a step toward my truck. Another. With each step, pictures flashed in my mind. I saw the mine collapse that killed Jamie, but this time I was there, watching it happen, unable to stop it. I saw the chemical plant fire, workers running with their clothes burning. I saw the steel mill, those 3 men choking on invisible gas. Then I saw things that hadn't happened yet. The Thompson mill, with its new machines running, but something wrong with the wiring. Sparks, flames, people trapped inside. I saw a school, bus on an icy road, sliding toward a guardrail that wasn't strong enough to stop it. I saw a dam with cracks spreading through concrete that was mixed too thin to save money. Every safety report I'd ever filed that was ignored. Every warning I'd ever given that went unheeded. Every corner cut that cost someone their life. The Mothman showed me all of it. And behind each disaster I saw faces. Jamie, the chemical plant workers, the millmen, hundreds more I didn't know yet. The Mothman was right in front of my truck now. It raised one long arm and pointed at me, not accusing, asking. A voice filled my head, but it wasn't one voice. It was many speaking together, men, women, children. Some I recognized. Jamie was among them, others I'd never heard before. "Will you see for us?" they asked. "Will you speak for us?" My mouth filled with the taste of copper and sulfur. My lungs ached like they were filling with coal dust again. Tears ran down my face. "Yes," I whispered, "I'll speak for you." The Mothman's wings spread wide. The red eyes flared brighter. Then it was gone, so fast I almost thought I'd imagined it. But the smell remained. And now I knew things I couldn't have known. I knew exactly how the wiring at Thompson Mill would fail, which panel would spark first, which door would jam when people tried to escape. I drove straight to Rebecca's apartment. It was nearly 2 a.m., but I pounded on her door until she answered, bleary-eyed and confused. "I saw it," I told her, pushing past her into the apartment. "The Mothman. It showed me things. The mill is going to burn, Becca, next week when they test the new machinery." She stared at me, still half asleep. "David, slow down. You're not making sense." "I need your help," I said, grabbing her shoulders. "I need your camera. It sees in things we can't, and I need your press badge. No one will listen to me. I'm just a crazy old miner with bad lungs, but they might listen to you." Rebecca made coffee while I told her everything. Well, almost everything. I left out the voices, the way Jamie's had been among them. Some things sound too crazy, even when you're talking about a giant moth creature that predicts disasters. When I finished, she was quiet for a long time. Then she picked up her camera. "Let's go back to the mill," she said. "Right now, while no one's there. I want to see what my camera sees." We drove back in silence. The mill was dark now, even the security lights off. Rebecca took pictures of everything. The electrical panels, the exits, the new machinery covered, in tarps. When we looked at them in the car, they showed exactly what I feared. In the photos of the electrical room, you could see the wiring glowing red, like it was already burning. In the photos of the exits, dark shapes crowded the doors, trying to get out, shapes of people who weren't there yet. And in one photo, standing in the center of the mill floor, was the Mothman. Its red eyes seemed to look right through the camera, right at us. "It's not causing these things," Rebecca said, her voice hushed. "It's warning them, before they even happen." I nodded. "It shows us what could happen if no one speaks up. If no one listens." So we make them listen, Rebecca said, her jaw set firm. We stop this one. But as we drove away from the mill, I couldn't shake the feeling that the Mothman hadn't shown me everything yet, that the worst was still to come. For the next 3 days, Rebecca and I tried everything to get someone to listen about the Thompson mill. We called the fire department, the safety inspector's office, even the local news. No one took us seriously. What could we say? That a giant moth creature showed us a vision. Instead, we talked about faulty wiring and unsafe conditions. But without proof, it was just the word of a sick ex-miner and a reporter known for chasing strange stories. We need more, Rebecca said on the 4th day. She was pacing my living room, her camera in her hands. We need actual evidence they can't ignore. The mill opens in 3 days, I reminded her. The test run is the day after tomorrow. Rebecca stopped pacing and looked at me, her eyes bright with a dangerous idea. We need to get inside, get pictures of the actual wiring, the actual problems. That's breaking and entering, I said. That's saving lives, she countered. I knew she was right, and I knew Jamie would have done the same thing. That night, we drove to the mill. A chain-link fence surrounded the property, but there was a gap behind the old storage shed where the ground had washed away. We squeezed through and made our way to the main building. A single security guard sat in a booth near the front entrance, watching a small TV. The back door was locked, but Rebecca had come prepared. I didn't ask where she learned to pick locks. Inside, the mill was dark and quiet. We used small flashlights, keeping the beams pointed down. Rebecca took pictures of everything, the electrical panels, the machinery, the exits. I checked the wiring, finding exactly what the Mothman had shown me. Cables too thin for the power load, connections made hastily, safety switches bypassed. This is criminal, I whispered. They're cutting every corner they can. Rebecca nodded, taking close-up shots. This will be enough. We'll take these to the fire marshal first thing tomorrow. That's when we heard it, the sound of wings. At first distant, then closer. The air grew heavy, and that familiar smell of methane and coal dust filled the mill. It's here, I said. The Mothman. Rebecca's face changed. Not to fear, but to something like hunger. She lifted her camera. I need to photograph it, David. Clear pictures. Proof. Becca, no, I said, grabbing her arm. That's not why we're here. But she pulled away. Don't you understand? If I can prove it exists, people will listen next time. Every time. No more ignored warnings. She headed toward the sound. Deeper. Into the mill. I followed, trying to stop her, but she moved quickly between the machines. The wing beats grew louder. The air felt thick, hard to breathe. Through the gaps in the machinery, I caught glimpses of movement, something large shifting in the shadows. Rebecca saw it too. She raised her camera, adjusting settings without looking, her eyes fixed on the darkness ahead. Becca, please, I called. It's dangerous. So is letting people die when we could save them, she called back. She disappeared around a corner. I hurried after her, my bad lungs making me slower than I wanted to be. When I caught up, she was standing in the center of the mill floor, her camera raised toward the high ceiling. The Mothman hung there, clinging to the steel beams. Its wings were folded now, but still massive. Those red eyes stared down at us, unblinking. Rebecca's camera clicked rapidly. The flash lit up the creature for split seconds, showing details I hadn't seen before. The texture of its skin, like burned leather. The shape of its face, not quite human or animal. The way its chest rose and fell with breathing. It's beautiful, Rebecca whispered. Terrible, but beautiful. The Mothman tilted its head like it was curious about us. Then it dropped from the ceiling. It didn't fall. It floated down, wings still folded, until it stood just 20 feet away from us. Close enough that I could feel heat coming off it, like standing near a furnace. Rebecca kept taking pictures. I wanted to run, to pull her away, but I couldn't move. The Mothman's eyes held me in place. Those eyes began to change. Instead of solid red, images appeared in them. Reflections. But not of us or the mill. I saw a woman I didn't recognize, holding a baby. The woman aged in fast forward. The baby grew into a little girl with Rebecca's eyes. Rebecca saw it too. Her camera lowered slowly. "What is it showing me?" she whispered. "The future," I said. "Your future." But the images kept changing. The girl grew older, became a teenager. She was in a school building I didn't recognize. There were other children around her. Then smoke, fire, screaming. "No," Rebecca said. Her voice cracked. "No, that can't be right." The Mothman took a step toward her, another. With each step, the images in its eyes became clearer. The school on fire, the girl trapped, the date on a wall calendar, April 14th, 1983. Rebecca's camera fell from her hands. She clutched at her chest. "Stop," she begged. "Please stop showing me this." But the Mothman didn't stop. It showed her everything, how the fire would start, how her daughter would be trapped, how the exits would be blocked because someone had locked the emergency doors to save on security costs. Rebecca fell to her knees. Her face had gone grey. Her breathing came in short gasps. "Becca!" I reached her just as she collapsed completely. I caught her, lowering her to the floor. "Becca, breathe. Just breathe." Her eyes were wide with horror, fixed on the Mothman that now stood directly over us. One of her hands clutched at her chest. The other gripped my arm with surprising strength. "My baby," she whispered. "My daughter. I haven't even had her yet." The Mothman's wings slowly opened, stretching to their full width. The air stirred. Around us, cool against my face. "I won't let it happen," I promised Rebecca. "We'll stop it, just like we're stopping this mill fire." But Rebecca wasn't listening anymore. Her grip on my arm loosened. Her eyes, still open, weren't seeing me or the Mothman. They weren't seeing anything. "Becca?" I shook her gently, then harder. "Rebecca!" She didn't respond. I felt for a pulse at her neck, then her wrist. Nothing. The Mothman made a sound then. The first sound I'd ever heard from it directly. A low, mournful cry that seemed to vibrate through the mill, through my bones. It was grieving. For Rebecca. For her unborn daughter who might still die in a fire 16 years from now. For all the deaths it had seen and couldn't prevent. I looked up at it through my tears. "Why?" I demanded. "Why show her that? Why not just show her the mill fire, the one we can stop now?" The Mothman's wings folded. It knelt beside us, those red eyes now dark and sorrowful. One long, thin hand reached out, not quite touching Rebecca's face, and suddenly I understood. It hadn't meant to kill her. It had tried to show her everything at once, the mill fire tomorrow, the school fire years from now, because in its mind all tragedies were happening at the same time. Past, present, future, they were all now to the Mothman. It hadn't understood that a human heart couldn't take that knowledge. As I held Rebecca's body, I heard a noise from outside. Voices, flashlights. The security guard must have heard something. The Mothman's head turned toward the sound, then back to me. Those red eyes met mine, and I felt, rather than heard, a question. "Will you still speak for them?" Even now, with Rebecca dead in my arms, even knowing what this knowledge could do to me, I thought of Jamie, of all the people who would die tomorrow if the mill test went forward. "Yes," I said through my tears, "I'll speak for them, but I need your help." The Mothman's wings opened again. It placed one hand on Rebecca's camera, still lying on the floor. Pictures, it seemed to say. Proof. I nodded, understanding. Then the security guard's flashlight beam cut through the darkness, landing on me kneeling beside Rebecca. "Hey, who's in here?" When the light moved to where the Mothman had been standing, there was nothing there. Just shadows, But the camera remained, and in it I knew was the proof we needed. They took Rebecca's body away in an ambulance, but everyone knew it was too late. The paramedics said it was a heart attack. They asked what we were doing in the mill at night. I told them we were investigating unsafe conditions. I didn't mention the Mothman. The police came too. They found our notes, our flashlights. They asked a lot of questions. Breaking and entering is a serious crime, they said. But when they saw my face, when they heard about Jamie, one of the officers softened. My dad worked the mines too, he said quietly. I know how it is when no one listens. They let me go home, but kept Rebecca's things as evidence, all except her camera. Somehow, in all the confusion, I managed to keep it with me. No one noticed, or maybe the Mothman helped somehow. I don't know. Back home, my hands shook as I turned on Rebecca's camera. The battery was low, but there was enough power to see the pictures. I scrolled through them slowly. Pictures of the mill, the faulty wiring, the blocked exits, evidence of every safety violation. Then came the pictures of the Mothman. They were clear, clearer than should have been possible in that dark mill. You could see every detail, the leathery texture of its skin, the strange shape of its body, those glowing red eyes. But there was more. In some of the photos, the Mothman wasn't alone. Ghostly figures stood with it, men in mining gear, covered in coal dust, workers in chemical plant uniforms, children in school clothes, and Jamie, my Jamie, standing right beside the Mothman, his hand resting on its wing. Tears blurred my vision. I wiped them away and kept scrolling. The last photos were different. They weren't taken in the mill. They showed other places. A school building with the date, April 14th, 1983, written on a wall calendar. A close-up of faulty wiring in a fuse box. An emergency exit with chains. It wrapped around the push bar. Pictures of disasters that hadn't happened yet. Places I'd never seen before. People who were still alive, who might stay alive if someone warned them. Rebecca's camera had captured not just the Mothman, but the visions it showed. The future it saw. I stayed up all night, going through the photos again and again. By morning, I knew what I had to do. First, the mill. That was most urgent. I printed the photos of the safety violations, put them in an envelope, and drove straight to the fire marshal's office when they opened. I didn't mention the Mothman or Rebecca's death. Just showed them the pictures, pointed out the violations. Where did you get these? The marshal asked, frowning. Does it matter? People will die if you don't stop the test run today. He studied the photos, then picked up his phone. Within an hour, a team of inspectors was at the mill. By noon, they had shut down the reopening indefinitely. 200 jobs lost, but 200 lives saved. I should have felt good about that, but all I could think about was Rebecca lying on that mill floor, her eyes staring at nothing. All I could think about was her daughter, not even born yet, who might still die in a school fire years from now. That night, I dreamed of the Mothman again. It stood at the edge of the forest, wings folded, waiting. Jamie stood beside it, just like in the photos. There's more to do, Dad, Jamie said in my dream. More people to save. I woke up knowing he was right. The mill was just the beginning. For the next week, I barely slept. I went through Rebecca's camera, studying every future disaster it had captured. I made notes, drew maps, figured out locations from tiny details in the backgrounds. A bridge that would collapse in Ohio, a building with faulty gas lines in Kentucky, a factory in Pennsylvania where chemicals were stored improperly, and the school, Rebecca's daughter's school. That one I studied most carefully. I didn't know where it was yet, but I had time to find it. Years, if needed. People thought I was crazy, of course. Anonymous tips about safety violations in places I'd never been. Some officials ignored me. Others investigated and found exactly what I described. A few started to pay attention, to take my calls seriously. Rebecca's newspaper ran a story about her death. They called her a hero who died trying to expose dangerous conditions. They mentioned me as her source, the whistleblower from the Black River mine. Suddenly, people who had ignored me before were listening. But it wasn't enough. For every disaster I managed to prevent, the Mothman showed me 3 more. Some nights I'd wake to find it standing at the foot of my bed, its red eyes showing me new visions, new tragedies waiting to happen. I started carrying a camera everywhere. Sometimes I could capture what it showed me. Other times, the photos showed nothing but shadows. My lungs got worse. The doctor said I had maybe 2 years left. I told him I didn't need that long, just long enough to find the school, to save Rebecca's daughter. 3 months after Rebecca died, I found a small notice in her newspaper's archives. Rebecca Stone, it said, was survived by her sister Sarah, who was pregnant with her first child. Due date, November 1967. I tracked Sarah down in the next town over, watched from a distance as she pushed a baby stroller through the park. A little girl with Rebecca's eyes. I left a sealed envelope in Sarah's mailbox. Inside were photos of the school, details about the fire that would happen in 1983, and a letter explaining everything. Well, not everything. Not the Mothman. Just enough. So she would know to check the school's safety when her daughter was old enough to attend. I don't know if she believed it. I don't know if she'll remember in 16 years, but I had to try. As the months passed, I grew weaker. My house filled with maps, with photos, with notes about disasters that might never happen now. The Mothman came less often, but when it did, it always had something new to show me. One night, as I sat on my porch looking at the forest, I saw it watching me from between the trees. Not showing me visions this time, just watching, waiting. I'm doing what I can, I told it. I'm speaking for them. It spread its wings, a silent acknowledgement. Then it was gone. That night I dreamed of Jamie, not standing at the edge of the forest this time, but sitting beside me on the porch. "You've done good, Dad," he said. "You've saved a lot of people." "Not you," I said. "I couldn't save you." Jamie smiled. Maybe that's not what I needed. I didn't understand what he meant then, but I would soon enough. The years passed. My hair turned grey, then white. My lungs got worse, then a little better, then worse again. The doctors were surprised I lasted as long as I did. I wasn't. I had a purpose. People in the area started calling me the Prophet. Some meant it kindly, others didn't. I didn't care what they called me as long as they listened when I warned them about unsafe buildings or faulty equipment. I kept every article about disasters that didn't happen because someone paid attention. A factory fire prevented when they found improperly stored chemicals. A bridge reinforced before it could collapse. A mine shaft properly secured before the rains came. Lives saved. Families kept whole. Children who would grow up with their parents. I lived alone in my little house at the edge of the forest. The Mothman still came sometimes, less often as the years went by. Maybe there were fewer disasters to show me, or maybe it knew my time was running short. I kept track of Rebecca's niece through the years. Her name was Anna. She looked more like her aunt with each passing year. I never spoke to her directly, but I watched from a distance as she grew from a toddler to a child to a teenager. As 1983 approached, I grew more anxious. I sent more letters to Anna's mother, to the school board, to the fire marshal. Anonymous warnings about the school's electrical system, about the chained emergency exits. In January 1983, I read in the paper that Anna's school was closed for emergency renovations. Fire code violations, they said. All the things I had warned them about. I should have felt relief. Instead, I felt hollow. My task was nearly complete. The disasters the Mothman had shown me were either prevented or beyond my reach now. My body was giving out. I knew I didn't have much time left. On the night of April 13th, 1983, the day before the fire would have happened, I sat on my porch, wrapped in a blanket, despite the mild spring air. The forest was dark and quiet. "It's done," I said to the darkness. "She's safe." For a long while, nothing happened. Then, between the trees, two red lights appeared. The Mothman stepped out of the forest into my yard for the first time. It looked the same as it had 16 years ago, tall and dark, with those massive wings folded against its back. Those red eyes studied me, taking in my aged face, my oxygen tank, my frail body in the rocking chair. "You want to show me something else?" I asked. "I don't think I have time for any more disasters." The Mothman came closer until it stood at the bottom of my porch steps. Then it did something it had never done before. It knelt, bowing its head to me. "Thank you," said that chorus of voices in my head. All the people I'd saved, speaking together. "Thank you for seeing, for speaking." Jamie's voice was among them, clearer than the others. "Jamie," I whispered, "I miss you, son." The Mothman's eyes changed, the red glow softening. An image formed in them. Jamie as he would have been if he'd lived. A man now, with my jaw and his mother's eyes. Smiling. "Some things can't be prevented," the voices said. "Some crossings can't be stopped, but you eased the passage for many. I didn't understand." "What passage?" "The light between worlds." The voices were gentler now. "The moments when life becomes death, when what is becomes what might have been. We stand at that crossing place. We witness, as you witnessed for us." Tears ran down my face. "I'm tired," I told the Mothman. "I've done what I could." "Yes, it is enough." The Mothman spread its wings, wider than I remembered, blotting out the stars. It reached one long arm toward me, not quite touching. "Sleep now, David Fletcher. We will watch over your crossing when it comes." I must have dozed off then. When I woke, the Mothman was gone. But a single feather lay on the porch step, dark and soft, like nothing from any bird I knew. I kept that feather on my bedside table. Sometimes, in the night, it seemed to glow with a faint red light. The next morning, I read in the paper about a small electrical fire at Anna's school. It had started in the wiring, just as the Mothman had shown. But because of the renovations, because of the new safety systems, it was contained to a single closet. No one was hurt. Everyone got out safely. I smiled as I folded the paper. My task was complete. That afternoon, I wrote down everything about the Mothman, about Rebecca, about all the disasters we'd prevented. I put the pages in a box with Rebecca's camera and the strange feather and addressed it to Anna Stone with instructions that it be given to her on her 18th birthday. I don't know if she'll believe it. I don't know if anyone will, but the truth should be told, even if it sounds impossible. The next day, today, I feel strangely light. My lungs don't hurt for the first time in years. The doctor says that's not a good sign, but I know better. Outside my window, the forest waits. Sometimes I catch glimpses of movement between the trees, wings, red eyes, watching, waiting, not with menace, with patience. I'm not afraid. The Mothman isn't death. It's a witness to the light between worlds, that moment when what is becomes what might have been. When one possibility ends, so others can begin. Jamie will be there, Rebecca too, and all the others who crossed before me. I've spent my life warning others about dangers they couldn't see. Now I face my own crossing with open eyes. Whatever waits on the other side, I'll meet it the same way I've met everything else. Watching, witnessing, speaking for those who can't speak for themselves. The light between worlds grows brighter now, and I'm ready to step into it. My name is Thomas Mitchell, and I wish I could forget everything I'm about to tell you. It was getting dark in the West Virginia mountains, and the air tasted funny, like old pennies you find in your pocket, but worse. It reminded me of something I didn't want to remember. The day my friend Rodriguez died in my arms back in Vietnam. His blood had that same metallic taste in the air. I was walking through the woods with Jake Morrison, a young park ranger who was only 22. Jake had these bright eyes and always called me Tommy like my little brother Danny used to do. That should have been my first warning. An owl screamed somewhere above us and my hands started shaking. That sound was exactly like Martinez screaming when he stepped on a landmine and lost both his legs. I tried to tell myself this was different. This was just a normal patrol in peaceful American woods. But my empty pill bottle rattled in my jacket pocket, reminding me I was 3 hours late taking my medicine. "You okay, Tommy?" Jake asked, looking worried. I nodded, but I wasn't okay. I hadn't been okay since 1968. The woods were too quiet. Back in the war, when everything went silent like this, it meant the enemy was close. It meant people were about to die. My skin crawled as I remembered our firebase that morning when Charlie attacked. First the silence, then the screaming. The sun was setting, turning everything red through the bare tree branches. Red like Rodriguez's. Uniform after the sniper shot him. Red like the blood that wouldn't wash off my hands no matter how hard I scrubbed. My radio crackled with static, and for a second I swear I heard Vietnamese voices. That was impossible. We were hundreds of miles from any radio tower that would carry foreign broadcasts. But my heart was racing anyway. A family of raccoons played near a fallen log, and they looked so innocent, just like the village children in Vietnam who used to wave at us before the Viet Cong came out of hiding to kill us all. Fog started rolling up the mountain, which was strange because fog usually rolls down. It moved like smoke, thick white smoke like the napalm we dropped on the rice fields. I could almost smell the burning. "Watch your step," I told Jake. "There might be holes hidden under the leaves." He laughed. "Come on, Tommy. What's the worst that could happen?" I didn't answer. I knew what the worst was. Hidden pits with sharp sticks at the bottom that killed Morrison and Williams. Traps that looked like normal ground until you fell through. Something moved in the trees above us. I couldn't see what it was, but I felt it watching, patient, waiting, like it had been there forever, longer than me, longer than my guilt. I'm 38 years old now, but sometimes I feel ancient. In Vietnam, my job was being a tunnel rat. That means I crawled into enemy tunnels to fight soldiers in the dark. Most of them were just kids, scared and hiding. I still taste gunpowder when I get nervous. I still see the face of the 14-year-old boy I had to kill with my bare hands. In a tunnel so narrow I couldn't use my rifle. I rolled up my sleeve and looked at the scars on my arm. I carved them there myself with Rodriguez's knife after he died. They spell out coward in ugly letters, because that's what I am. In my pocket, I carried my brother Danny's dog tags. Danny was supposed to come home from the war. I was supposed to die instead, but I faked being sick the day his patrol got hit by a landmine. He went in my place. He died in my place. Now here I was with Jake, and Jake reminded me so much of Danny. It hurt. Same laugh, same way of trusting me completely. Same way of calling me Tommy like I was someone worth looking up to. I learned how to survive in the war, but every lesson cost someone's life. Every time I lived through something, someone else died. That's how it always worked. I was 3 hours late taking my pills, and my brain was starting to play tricks on me. The trees looked like they were moving. The shadows looked like people. Then I heard Danny's voice, clear as day. "You can't save him either, Tommy. You never could save anyone." I spun around, but Jake was the only one there. "Did you hear that?" I asked. "Hear what?" I knew I was losing my mind. The question was whether the danger coming for us was real or just another nightmare from inside my broken head. Either way, Jake was going to pay the price for being near me. They always did. We kept walking as the sun went down. Jake was using his flashlight to check the trees, looking for broken branches or scratches that might tell us where the missing hikers had gone. "Tommy, come look at this," he said, his voice quieter than before. I walked over to where he was, standing. There were deep scratches in the bark of an old oak tree. They looked like claw marks, but they were too big to be from any animal I knew. What made my blood run cold was the pattern. The scratches almost looked like letters. "What do you think made these?" Jake asked. I stared at the marks. They looked like Vietnamese writing, but that was impossible. I never taught Jake to read Vietnamese, and he was too young to have been in the war. But somehow, looking at those scratches, I could read them. They spelled out Tommy, probably just a bear. I lied. My hands were shaking again. The woods had gone completely quiet. No birds, no insects, nothing. It was the same kind of silence that used to happen right before the enemy attacked, like nature itself was holding its breath. We walked another 100 yards before Jake stopped again. He pointed his flashlight ahead of us. "Oh, God," he whispered. There was a dead deer hanging from a tree branch by its back legs. Its throat had been cut, and the blood was still dripping. But it wasn't just how it died that made me sick. It was how it was hanging. I'd seen bodies hung exactly like this before in Vietnam. American soldiers that Charlie had captured and killed. The smell hit me next. Not just the smell of death, but something specific, something that took me right back to the jungle. It smelled like Sergeant Peterson's body after we found him 3 days too late in the Mekong heat. "We should go back," Jake said. "This isn't normal." But I couldn't move. I was counting in my head, like I always did when things got bad. Rodriguez, Martinez, Peterson, Williams, Morrison, all the names of the dead. All the men who died because I lived. "Tommy?" Jake touched my arm. "You're scaring me." I snapped back to the present. "Sorry. Yeah, let's keep moving." We found an old campsite, about a quarter mile further up the trail. Someone had been there recently, but they'd left in a hurry. There were 2 sleeping bags torn to pieces, scattered around like they'd been attacked by a wild animal. But they were arranged in a way that made my stomach turn. They looked like body bags, like the black bags we used to zip our dead friends into. I pulled out my compass to check our direction. The needle was spinning wildly, then it stopped. It was pointing northeast, toward where Vietnam would be if you could walk there. That was impossible. Compasses don't work that way. "Jake," I called out, but he didn't answer. I looked around and saw him standing perfectly still, about 20 feet away, staring at something on the ground. His flashlight beam was shaking. "What is it?" I asked. He didn't answer. I walked over and looked down. There was a human finger lying in the dirt. It was wearing a wedding ring, a simple gold band, exactly like the one my brother Danny wore, even though Danny never got married. He died before he got the chance. "We need to get out of here," Jake said. His voice sounded strange, like it was coming from far away. I looked up at him, and for just a second, in the flashlight beam, he looked exactly like Danny. Same face, same scared expression Danny had the night before he died. "You can't save him either, Tommy." I heard Danny's voice again, but Jake's lips weren't moving. The fog was getting thicker. It was moving in a way that didn't make sense, like it was being pushed by something. It reminded me of the morning Charlie overran our base. The fog moved, like it had a purpose, like it was alive. I tried to find the trail markers we'd been following, but they were gone. In their place, carved into tree trunks, were Vietnamese. Words. I could read them even though I didn't want to. "Tunnel rat come home," they said. "Tommy," Jake said, but his voice sounded different now, deeper, older. I turned around and Jake was gone. In his place stood someone I recognized but couldn't quite believe I was seeing. It was my brother Danny. But Danny had been dead for 6 years. "Hello, Tommy," Danny said, smiling that same gentle smile I remembered. "I've been waiting for you." I stared at Danny, my heart beating so fast I thought it might stop. He looked exactly like I remembered, but something was wrong. His smile was too wide, showing too many teeth. "You're not real," I whispered. "You're dead. I saw your body." Danny laughed, but it didn't sound like his laugh anymore. I'm as real as your guilt, Tommy. I'm as real as all those nights you wake up screaming my name. I blinked hard, trying to make him go away. When I opened my eyes, he was still there. But now he looked taller. Much taller. 10 feet tall, maybe. More, but still wearing Danny's face like a mask that didn't quite fit. "Where's Jake?" I asked. "Jake?" Danny tilted his head. "Jake is right here with us. Can't you hear him?" That's when I heard Jake's voice calling for help, but it was coming from Danny's mouth. Then I heard Martinez screaming, then Rodriguez crying for his mother, all the voices of all the dead men coming from my dead brother's throat. "Why did you let me die, Tommy?" Danny asked. But now he was speaking in Vietnamese. I understood every word, even though that was impossible. "Why am I dead when you're still alive?" Danny started walking toward me, but he wasn't walking like a person. His arms were too long, hanging down past his knees, his legs bent the wrong way, like a dog walking on its back legs. But his face was still Danny's face, still smiling. "I came back for you," he said. "All this time, I've been waiting. Do you know how lonely it is being dead, Tommy?" I tried to run, but my legs wouldn't move. It was like those dreams where something terrible is chasing you, but you can't make your body work right. "I'm not supposed to be here," I said. "You're supposed to be alive. I was supposed to die on that patrol, not you." "That's right," Danny said. He was close enough now that I could smell him. He smelled like dirt and old blood. "You were supposed to die. But you faked being sick, didn't you? You let me go instead." Danny reached out with one of his 2 long arms and touched my face. His fingers were ice cold and felt like wet leaves. "I forgive you," he whispered, "but now you have to fix it. You have to make it right." "How?" I asked. "How can I fix it? You're already dead." Danny smiled wider. Now I could see that his teeth weren't teeth at all, but pieces of broken metal, shrapnel from the landmine that killed him. "It's simple," he said. "You just have to join me. Then everything will be balanced again." Behind Danny, I saw Jake standing in the shadows. But Jake wasn't moving. He was just standing there with his eyes wide open, staring at nothing. Like he was frozen in place. "What did you do to him?" I asked. "Nothing yet," Danny said. "But I will, unless you choose. You or him, Tommy. Just like it was supposed to be. You or me." I looked at Jake again, and suddenly he looked just like Danny did when he was young. Same scared expression, same way of trusting me to keep him safe. "Please don't hurt him," I said. "He didn't do anything wrong." "Neither did I," Danny replied. "But I'm still dead." The fog was getting thicker around us. I couldn't see the trees anymore, just Danny's tall shape and Jake standing frozen behind him. It felt like we weren't in West Virginia anymore. It felt like we were back in Vietnam, in the jungle where everything went wrong. "You remember the tunnels, don't you, Tommy?" Danny asked. "Remember crawling through the dark, killing children? Remember how good you got at staying alive while everyone else died?" I did remember. I remembered too much. "I had to," I whispered. "It was war. I had to survive." "No," Danny said. "You chose to survive. Every time you chose yourself over everyone else, over Rodriguez, over Martinez, over me." Danny was right behind Jake now, his long arms wrapped around the boy's shoulders like a hug. But Jake still wasn't moving, wasn't even blinking. "Last chance, Tommy," Danny said. "Come with me now and I'll let the boy live. Keep running and I'll do to him what the landmine did to me." I reached for my gun, but my hands were shaking too hard to aim properly. "The gun won't help," Danny said. "You can't kill someone who's already dead, and you can't save someone you're destined to lose." Danny leaned down and whispered something in Jake's ear. Jake's eyes suddenly focused on me, and he opened his mouth like he was trying to scream, but no sound came out. "Choose," Danny said. "Choose now." I looked at Jake, and all I could see was my little brother, scared and asking me to protect him, just like Danny did the night before he died, just like every time I failed to save someone I loved. I raised my gun with shaking hands, but I knew Danny was right. Silver bullets wouldn't work on guilt. You can't shoot your way out of the things you've done wrong. "I'll go with you," I said. "Just let Jake go, please." Danny laughed, and it sounded like wind blowing through a graveyard. "You still don't understand, do you, Tommy? It's too late for deals." Jake suddenly broke free from Danny's grip and ran toward me. "Save me, Tommy," he cried. "Save me this time." But those were Danny's words, the exact same words Danny said to me the night before he died, when he was scared about going on patrol. Jake ran past me into the woods, and Danny followed, moving like a giant spider through the trees. I could hear Jake screaming, the same way Danny screamed when the landmine went off. I ran after them, crashing through branches and bushes. My flashlight beam bounced everywhere, showing me pieces of the chase. Danny's two long arms reaching for Jake, Jake's face white with terror, the fog swirling around them like it was alive. "I'm sorry," I shouted. "I'm sorry I lived. I'm sorry Danny died. I'm sorry I can't fix it." The words echoed through the forest, and for a moment, everything went quiet. Then I heard a terrible sound. The sound of something breaking, something wet hitting the ground. I found them in a small clearing. Jake was lying on the ground, not moving. His body was twisted wrong, like he'd been torn apart. His dog tags were scattered around him in the dirt, glinting in my flashlight beam. But they weren't Jake's dog tags. They were Danny's. I knelt down next to Jake's body, and that's when I saw my hands. They were covered in blood, fresh blood. "No," I whispered. "No, no, no." Danny was gone. The 10-foot monster was gone. It was just me, alone in the woods, with a dead boy at my feet. My gun was in my hand, but I didn't remember firing it. The smell of gunpowder filled the air. Jake had a bullet hole in his chest. I killed him. During one of my episodes, one of my flashbacks, I killed Jake Morrison. I thought I was fighting Danny's ghost, but I was really fighting a scared 22-year-old kid who just wanted to help. "You finally understand," I heard Danny's voice, but gentler now. More like the real Danny I remembered. I looked up and saw my brother standing at the edge of the clearing. Not the monster version, just Danny, young and sad and dead. "I didn't mean to," I said. I thought I was saving him." "You were saving yourself," Danny said. "You always do, even when it kills everyone around you." "I'm sick, Danny. My brain is broken. I can't tell what's real anymore." Danny nodded. "I know. That's why I came back, to give you a choice." He walked over and sat down next to me, like we used to do when we were kids. For a moment, he felt real and warm and alive. "You can come with me now," he said. "It'll be quick, painless, like you should have given me." I looked at Jake's body, then at my bloody hands, then at the gun. "I've killed so many people," I said, "in the war, and now Jake. How many more will die because I'm too broken to fix?" "Only you can answer that," Danny said. I thought about all the other young rangers, all the other people who might try to help me, all the other Jake Morrisons who might remind me of Danny and pay the price for it. "I'm sorry," I said to Jake's body. "I'm sorry I couldn't tell the difference between you and my ghosts." Danny put his hand on my shoulder. "It's time, Tommy." I nodded and picked up the gun. My hands weren't shaking anymore. But then I heard sirens in the distance. Real sirens, not ghosts. Someone had heard the gunshot and called for help. "They'll lock me up," I said. "They'll put me in a hospital." "Maybe that's what you need," Danny said. "Maybe that's how you stop killing people." The sirens were getting closer. Danny was starting to fade away. "Will I see you again?" I asked. "Only if you want to," he said. "Only if you can't learn to forgive yourself." Danny disappeared just as the first police car arrived. I sat there in the clearing with Jake's body, covered in blood, holding a smoking gun. When they asked me what happened, I told them the truth. All of it, the war, the guilt, the hallucinations, everything. They didn't believe the part about Danny's ghost, of course. They said I had a psychotic break. PTSD-induced psychosis, they called it. They said I imagined the whole thing about the monster in the woods, but Jake Morrison was still dead. That part was real. They gave me a new kind of medicine and put me in a place where I can't hurt anyone else, where there are no young men with bright eyes who remind me of my dead brother. Sometimes late at night I still hear Danny calling my name, but now I don't answer. I've learned that the dead should stay dead and the living should stay away from people like me. My name is Thomas Mitchell, and I killed the only person I was trying to save. Some kinds of guilt never go away. They just find new ways to make you pay.